Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us, Doctors Against Genocide weekly webinar. It is our honor to have our colleagues from Gaza, as always, and we will start with them today. We also have special guests, Mr. Claude Gatebuke and Miss Hiab Teshome that we will hear from after we hear from Gaza. I am back from Palestine. I just got back a few days ago, and I can tell you that there is nowhere more dangerous in the world today than the world for a Palestinian. It is dangerous to be in Gaza. It is dangerous to be in the West Bank. It is dangerous to be anywhere in the world, unfortunately. When human decency, when international and humanitarian laws are ignored, we are doomed to see the scenes of atrocities repeat again and again. They came first for us, and they will come for the students, they will come for the migrants, and history shows us that impunity only expands. We see every day images of the shivering children in Gaza, the children who are scared, bombed, cold, starving, and alone. We see the children, our children, missing one, two, sometimes all four limbs. And there is no one that should be allowed to live with this knowledge and this experience. Every child in Gaza today lives with the knowledge that they could be next in 1 second. What will it take for us to save them? And what kind of world looks at this and lets us go on without moving and to end it? What kind of world censors those who are speaking up against genocide and makes opposing genocide a criminal offense? But I always carry hope, and I see it in the moral clarity and the determination of this community, Doctors Against Genocide, my community, our community. I see it in the tireless advocacy, in the bold voices, in all of your refusal to be silenced. And above all, I see it in the resilience of our colleagues and our people in Palestine, especially those in Gaza who continue to resist with courage, even when their cities and villages are besieged and bombed. The signs of genocide are all over Palestine. The siege, the segregation, the ghettoization, the systematic dehumanization of every Palestinian. We are living daily life through the lens of the disease of genocide. The question is, what will we do? What more can we do? I came to the conclusion that this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. We must protect each other. We must protect our sanity. We support one another. We lean into our principle grounded mission and our principle grounded leadership, and we should not let go of our mission, mobilizing the medical community to be upstanders, not bystanders in the face of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, and push against the current and dream of a better world and make it a reality for us as human and for the children of the world. And I'm going to quote part of a poem by Mahmoud Darwish that Dr. Jbour actually likes it a lot. قف على ناصية الحلم وقاتل. Stand on the battlefront of your dream and fight for it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. And we will start with our doctors from Gaza today. And I think we can start with Iyad Amawi from Deir al-Balah.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Really, I appreciated your speech and hopefully your support. I know all of us are have a Palestinian spirit, and the size and the support and our testimonies. All of us will support the humanity at the final. We will win, inshallah. We have a clear victory. We believe here in Gaza, the international community and all of the activities like Doctor Against Genocide and others will help increasing awareness. So maybe we're devastating at some times, but at the final points, we will achieve the clear victory for the humanity, and we will save our children in the final road. So I will talk about two main points. The first, the elements of chaos engineering in the Gaza that I observed, and I recorded multiple notes about it. And the second point about the humanitarian situation here is catastrophe, but I have some urgent notes about the situation, especially for the children here. Maybe the chaos engineering, it's a new item that appear in the Israeli media, and they mentioned before 48 hours in the Israeli website, and also the Israeli authorities, they deal with our people here with over depend on this new plan. They need, for some points I mentioned, war, displacement, and starvation, disruption and the state institution, destruction of social bonds, weakening the rule of law, and pushing people to fight for basic needs, something like what is still happening around the GHF distribution centers. Really, the real story here, the people fights and attacks the trucks and attacks each other at some point in the Gaza Strip to obtain some foods to feed their children or feed themselves. These situations we call as the science of engineering of chaos or chaos engineering. It's a very important note to note why the Israeli and American have intents to continue support GHF, and why we as a free people must resist against the continuing of the work of the GHF, because it's deeply inhuman. They deal with us as animals, as the defense minister mentioned before at the beginning of the war. When I went to the Netzarim access point and recorded some notes of my people there, they really kill them without any discrimination, without any consideration for the civilians and their suffering. And they walk more than 15 kilometers to obtain some flowers or baskets of foods. The casualties that are still coming from the distribution center, especially in the south of the Gaza, must be clear for our colleagues, my colleagues. The new plan, as a Harvard University mentioned in their new research, I will send to you, Dr. Nidal, if you hope to distribute this conclusions from 9 pages with the raw data and database. It's very important. I will quote some text from the final quotation and conclusion. They served the Israeli military plan. They need to force our people to displace to the south of the Gaza Strip under the hidden main target for obtaining foods. The warehouses centers positioned in 4 of it in the Rafah and the 5th in the Netzarim axis. No warehouses in the Gaza town or in the north of Gaza. So it's very clear, as Harvard mentioned, from the map data and from their research and local testimony, their intention to force our people displaced again to the south. And the raw data they collect, and I helped some of their researchers, the Americans and Israeli need to continue the GHF plan to force our people at the final stage to go to the south. And this is very strange things that serve the military plan for the Israeli forces. I know from my colleagues in the NGOs, the Israeli negotiate them multiple times to work and cooperate with them to distribute foods. But until this moment, no any charity, especially the international charities or NGOs, refuse completely to cooperate with the GHF because inhumanity and the hundreds of casualties that is still happening here. So this is a very important note that we need from you, my colleagues, to support the international community and the UN agencies to have a resilience and to stop any cooperation or a connection with the GHF. If the GHF is stopped completely here, may I will say, inshallah, the UNRWA and WFP and other organizations will resuming their works freely. There's no choice for the Israeli, even though what's still happening, they will permit and let the UNRWA to get their rules again and again. But they try at the final stage, from my notes, yesterday and today, they let the WFP and the World Kitchen under the hidden cooperation to take some amounts of trucks, maybe 8 and 13 of trucks today, to cook for foods for our camps here in the south. So at the end of the road, we must insist to all of our charity and NGOs to refuse any cooperation with the GHF. At the final, the Israeli will give up and will let them do what they need to do. So it's very important note. No, any international media cover something like that.
Many of us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Okay. One moment. Okay. I will continue. Yeah. I will quote something from the ثواني بس عشان أنا بدي أخذ final statement. Yeah. Abstract from the Harvard. This report provides maps, location data, and an initial brief analysis of the Israeli-American GHF aid distribution compounds, rapidly constructed and beginning to operate in Gaza in May 2025. The overall geographic relation of these compounds to Gaza's populations and to the infrastructures of Israeli military control of Gaza, and also their consistent internal architecture, all suggested their design is predominantly responsible to Israeli military strategy and tactics rather than aimed at a broad humanitarian relief interventions. As with the prior reports in this series, it's rapidly written to provide real-time inputs to unfolding events, additional data layers available upon request. As the final recommendations, they recommend this aids haven't any amount of foods that needed for children or elderly people or who patients of suffering from chronic disease. So it's very important to know this is a public relation campaign, not aids distribution. My people, when they went to the Netzarim access point, I have a lot of testimonies. I recorded it. Some of them now in the ICU, intensive care unit in the Al-Aqsa hospital and other hospital in the south. They're suffering from the severe injuries and they unconscious and have shrapnel in their brain. I know the hero of the football in the Palestine. He's martyred last week. They gunned them and shot at them, and he died in the Al-Aqsa hospital. He went there twice before he's targeted to obtain some amount of foods. He have 4 children, and now his wife have 4 orphans. And really, it's a horrible time that we mentioned a lot of our people, and especially heroes, doctors, engineers, suffering from famine, and they went there to obtain some foods to feed their children. They maybe succeed one time, second time, but at the third time or fourth, they will die. So it's a death trap. And the vital things, please, my colleagues, we need to concentrate over it. The massacre is still committed there in the GHF warehouses and around the Israeli bases. If we succeeded to defeat those evils in this incidents, everything here will change. So, Dr. Nidal, you asked me before in the previous meeting, what as a Gazans do we need from you and from our colleagues in the world? I mean, we need to increase our coverage and to take care about the massacres and the suffering of the civilians when they repeated orders of evacuation today and yesterday, especially in the Gaza and the north, they increased the suffering of people. No safe place, no tent, and they refuse any coordination with the ICRC to let them bring some tents and shelters to those people who forced them to be displaced for multiple times. ICRC, I talked to them multiple times. The Israeli refused any shelters to come into the Gaza. I don't know where my people will go, especially after they shrink the area in the Gaza town and the Deir al-Balah and al-Mawasi. We live now in the shrinked area. It's just 40 kilometers, square kilometers. And we now in the summer conditions, we now suffering from the shortage of the sweet water. And the infection began to spread, especially between our children's skin infections. So I hope these 2 points will take care from my colleagues in their observation and their notes in the near future to maybe something good will happen. The pressure from the international community. I know I attended yesterday a special meeting with the UN agency in the New York City. They take my testimony about the refusal of the Israeli to let the trucks come in without restrictions. And they need to provide the GHF, maybe loyalty or something like that from the UN community. All of us refuse that. And we insist over our previous opinion and will not cooperate with them completely. And we hope so from all of the UN agency until this catastrophe will end, Dr. Nitara and my colleagues. So it's my first point. The last point, I will let my Hamza or others to complete, and I will prepare myself for this second point that's very important for conclusion of how they serve the military plan for the Israeli. And that Netanyahu is still need to force us to displace from the Gaza. He didn't give up from his speech until this moment. He have a meeting to discuss how they will continue the genocide in the south of the Gaza Strip. They mentioned that in the Israeli media. So the war is resuming with intensifying bombing in Gaza after the Iran and Israel war is stopped. Complete, I will prepare myself again and I return when it's appropriate for you.
It seems we lost Hamza for now, Iyad. If you want to continue now, that's fine.
Yeah.
If not,
Okay.
we can move on to another speaker.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
But before you go, so the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, what's so-called Humanitarian Foundation, denied all the reports that there is violence being committed around their centers.
Yeah.
But they came out yesterday, and it seems they are admitting it now, and they said the evidence is overwhelming to ignore. And they demanded that Israel carries an investigation on all these reports about violence, about using the aid as trap. And it seems that today the Israeli genocidal army, the IDF, is saying that they reviewed the process, they learned the lesson. So do you trust these people? Do you trust? It seems, at least for now, they both admitted that what the people in Gaza, the people on the ground, the starved people have been saying all along, that these aid centers, what's so-called aid centers, have been death traps. They have been used to lure starved people, to kill them and to murder them, to humiliate them. They keep denying all this all along, but it seems now they are coming to the conclusion that they are admitting it because they could not hide it anymore. The evidence is overwhelming, and they are promising that they are gonna change policy or whatever it is. Do you trust these organizations or these processes? And
No.
you can finish with your second point until Hamza is back.
Yeah, that's very good questions, Dr. Nadal. Completely, we didn't trust them because from my observation, when the martyrs and casualties come to the ER and all of the medical centers here, in the south, they killed them and shot them without any discrimination. So there's no evidence that the aid distribution is ongoing with the right way, with the database, with maybe a fairness for our people. They really didn't distribute the foods for the needed people. So it's very easy. They need to complete their public relation here in Gaza to replace the rule of UNRWA and UN agency here, because they need to cleansing our rights as a refugee, not for Gaza, but all of the Palestinian case from the 1948. They need to clear that and provide us with the white paper. There is no refugee rights. This is the plan for Netanyahu and President Trump, and they mentioned that before multiple years, and this is their chance to implement this plan within the war actions here in Gaza. So the main observation about the GHF, why we haven't trust in them, there are potentially 5 compounds. 4 have now been widely reported in the media and seem ready for operation, and they're still ongoing. 3 in the Murad, Tal Sultan area, and Netzarim corridor in central of the Gaza Strip. Potentially, the 5th, number 5, is being formed on the coast, just to the west of an existing Tel Sultan compound. So larger than the others and less than 100 meters from the compound too. So far, its construction features are identical to the prior 4 that have the same shape of the jail. Based on the typical progress of this, its function should be clearer in the later of my note. The 4 complete compound follow the identical design model. They are clearly guided by the single designer and execution template, embodying the same operational architecture logic. All are in close proximity to the fortified IDF military position. The majority of Gaza's population in Gaza are in the Gaza City area and cannot access any of the aid compound. This is a very important note, as they are separated from the south of the Gaza by the massive and dangerous Netzarim corridor. Those in the other population clusters can, in principle, access the aid compound, but will be hampered by the lack of motorized transport or proper roads. This is very important note also. They must traverse several kilometers. I know my peoples who maybe walked more than 15 up to 20 kilometers at least in of maybe at the coastal area or others, and return with their bulky boxes of the food, whose the content is estimated to be at least 15 kilogram in the same manner. All 5 clusters in the Israeli declared buffer area, entry to which is paired and liable to attack. Thus, in principle, they can only obtain aid by entering an area into which Israeli has formed barred their entry. So this is have shaped their position or their bases as a warehouses for the jail, not for aid distributions. When we compare the warehouses distribution center with the UNRWA, it's completely different. There is no respect for our dignity or humanity. So the physical layout of the compound and the overall conception and the process of distribution within these seems to prioritize fortification and control, maximizing protection of the armed operation, personnel and supplies, and their ability to strict surveil and control all those approaching the facility. There are no indications of any attention to the principles involved by humanitarian organization over time for the planning operation of food distribution in a disaster and conflict context. These principles priorities beneficiary dignity and access through mechanisms that build community ownership and de-escalation rather than crowd control through forces. Maybe I will mention something else the aid compound have only operated for a few days, and they announced delay by delay after maybe have more than 400 martyrs. The international campaign, and I mentioned that we have Congress meetings with my colleagues in the United States. They have maybe a closed meeting about the GHF rule, and they need to complete or no. But the American administration announced they will support them with $30 million again after the previous founding. So the compound don't bring food to needy populations, but rather entice under the conditions of severe duress and some portions of these populations into remote and highly militarized settings. The majority of Gaza's population cannot currently access the centers, and those who can do so have to cross unprotected terrain in a zone that have declared out of bound of the Israeli military. The fact that 4 of the 5 compounds lay south in the Muraj region repeatedly indicate the Israeli officials as the intended destination for concentration of Palestinians to be displaced from the remainder of the Gaza, and to impending intensification of the military attacks. It's not reassuring. The internal layout of map and others data and our research provide the final results. The military plan of the Israeli is still ongoing over the ground. No evidence the Israeli will let the truck to come in without restriction, without struggles. They put blocks on the roadside, and they need our people to attack these trucks and to create creative chaos again and again to completely maybe cause full collapsation for our morals and for our social ties. It's very important, Dr. Nidal, to know our Palestinian, we live here in Gaza as a big family. And when we see our young people attack each other to obtain flowers and foods, it's a horrible time to achieve that moment. So it's must stop at now. There's no time to talk about others. We must save our dignity, our moral. The collapsation of fabric of Palestine, it's not easy to rebuild it and to fix it after the famine and the war concerns. So it's very important to note the Israeli hidden plan is to force us to displace and to maybe force us to live in the shrinked area, and their maybe demilitarized zone or security zone around all of the Gaza Strip. It's shrinked the Gaza, and they cut our land for more than 70% of the Gaza is under the military control. And even though they withdraw from some parts of the Gaza when the Iran and Israeli conflict happened, they prevent our people by declaring multiple times evacuation orders by the internet, and they haven't grant our people to return to their places and to obtain some foods from their old house or destructed house. So the horrible time now, we live in the baddest time from the beginning of the war. The famine is maybe it's very clear for us. The famine will destroy everything here, the moral, the tide, the social, society. I don't know how we can stop this, but we have some point of hopes. The increasing of pressure over the international community and free people like you will force the Israeli to let some trucks to go to the WCK, maybe WFP, ICRC, and Norwegian Association. They mentioned this morning they will obtain some trucks to distribute within their criteria. We recommended that still will happen, and maybe increasing the number of trucks. If any ceasefire that they announce will happen in the next few days, something good will happen, and the amount of trucks will change rapidly and increasing the number. But until that moment, no, we have no time to wait the ceasefire to implement or something like that. The public relation of the GHF must stop now. I recommend and advise we must maybe announce international campaign against the GHF and march any activity that can help to stop this death trap and to stop it, inshallah.
Thank you.
Nidal, one thing I want to say. So, in terms of, Dr. Iyad, you said that the organizations on the ground have a role. I think, what we mean, what is meant by that is that any aid organization should not work with the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. So there should be no collaboration with them. It has been very clear that, the people in Gaza do not want them. Remember, this is a starved population and a population that has nothing. If they say that they do not want Gaza Humanitarian Fund to help them, that is a very, very serious indication. So this is not something to be taken lightly. We, when we do visits with our representatives, we talk about the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, and we should escalate this even more, and probably create, like Dr. Amawi said, a campaign of pressure to delegitimize the Gaza Health Foundation. These are Americans. These are like American citizens. We should actually find them, and we should identify them, and we should actually have conversations with them. This should be one of the things that we should do immediately. And maybe Nidal, you want to talk about the oxycodone
Yeah, I
question.
mean, we're getting a lot of question about, oxycodone pills or some drugs being used in the aid sent to Gaza. Some people say it's rumors, it's, a false account. Some people say it is true. I don't know. Did you hear anything about it, Iyad? Do you have any
Yeah,
documentation of this, any evidence of this?
yeah. From our locals employee here, they worked with the NGOs and the distribution centers. They noted that happened multiple times, but maybe the last time they recorded some videos and photos that prove some have bullets of drugs within the flowers bag. So yeah, it's correct, and I didn't strange about what the Israeli still committing with the cooperation with the bad peoples. I know more and more about the drugs that the Israeli put a plan to let it come freely to the Gaza, to complete their plans here and to destroy the young and the society also. So yeah, of course, we need to concentrate over this new issue and their intention. Like you mentioned, they need to destroy the society here in Gaza. Before the war, the local authorities have authorities that responsible for war, protecting our society from the drugs, and they're resuming war against the merchants that cooperate with the drug merchants on the Israeli side. It's a big issue and need special meetings to describe what's still happening. They use the drugs and the medicines that have some bad indications to let people lose their mind and increasing the suffering. Also, any point that will enable Israel to succeed, they will implement it. So don't be strange about what's still happening. So the war must stop, and nothing to see more. The war will cause the collapsation if it's continue more than this limit. We can save what we can now, but in the near future, I don't know how we can stop the collapsation in many sectors. We hope that this will stop soon as possible, yeah, Dr. Nibar.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Iyad. Sorry. Thank you for this painful but factual, objective eyewitness testimony exposing the what's called Gaza Health Foundation. We know it is a way to commit genocide by other means. The Israelis, backed by the United States, it seems, don't see the massive bombing, massive campaign of bombing Gaza over the 2 years was enough to finish the job and to perpetrate the genocide. So they are committing genocide by other means, including the forced and deliberate starvation of people, of hospitals, prevention of medicine and supplies going to these hospitals. And now with this Gaza Health Foundation, which is a tool, it's a military tool, militarized tool, using aid as a weapon to trap the people, the starved people, to kill more people. And it seems now with these new reports, even to impinge on their health by other means, by using drugs or toxins and stuff like that. So it is a way to commit genocide by other means. The forced starvation, the GHF as a project that is built by the military to complete the genocide, and it is as a structure, as a concept, in violation of all humanitarian principles of humanitarian aid that include humanity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality. The GHF, which is the American a criminal project in Gaza, in cooperation with the Israeli genocidal regime, is in violation of all these principles, and we should expose this. No one in the world should cooperate with them. They should be exposed, and everyone should insist that the international organization that have been doing humanitarian aid all over the world for decades and centuries, the ones who know how to do it, the ones who adhere to the principles of neutrality, humanity, impartiality, and independence, the ones who already have the food there 2 miles away, 5 miles away from the starved people. They have all what they need. They have what is enough for all the people in Gaza for 3 or 4 months of food and supplies and medications. They don't need any money now. They have it there. It's all paid for. All what they need is access. And we know that these organizations know how to do it. They have the capacity to do it at scale. They have the logistics, they have the personnel, they have the plans on the ground to deliver aid to these people who need it the most. On top of all the crimes that the GHF uh, is committing, is the crime that the aid or the people who need aid the most, any aid, any aid in the world, the people who need it the most, which is the sick, the old, the child, the vulnerable, the amputee, the injured, uh, the weaker people, cannot walk all these miles to get aid, and they cannot compete with thousands of starved people going there to get aid. So this is not just putting all the population at risk and killing them. This is depriving the most vulnerable segments in the population, the people who need aid most, from getting anything at all. Because if you are older, if you are sick, if you are injured, if you have an amputation, if you are on a wheelchair, if you are on dialysis, if you have cancer, you will not be able to go with
Yes.
crowds, tens of thousands of starved people, especially younger people, who are all starved, and people should not blame them for, pushing and stuff like that, and competing or fighting to get food. So this deprives this or most vulnerable segment from getting any aid. Now I want to go to Hamza before we lose him. His internet connection is not reliable. Hamza is a medical student who was stationed in the Indonesian hospital north of Gaza for the last 2, 3 years. He was forcibly displaced and expelled from the north of Gaza. Now he managed to make it to Al Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. Hamza is the fifth medical student. He's volunteering there at the hospital. Thank you for joining, Hamza. Please, we need to hear from you, your updates on the situation there in Gaza City now as we speak. تفضل حمزة.
السلام عليكم. Thank you, Dr. Nadal.
Alaikum salam, Hamza. Hello.
First of all, I would like to sincerely thank Doctors Against Genocide for giving me this opportunity to speak about what's happening here in Gaza. I'm Hamza Rabhan. I'm a medical student from Gaza. I speak to you now from inside the Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. As Dr. Nadal say, I have been volunteering in the hospitals of northern Gaza since the beginning of the war. I worked at the Indonesian hospital until it was forced out of service. I speak to you today as someone who has lost his home and his heart piece by piece with every friend or family member I have prayed. To be honest, the situation in Gaza is tragic beyond words. Of the blood, a mixture of horrible bombs and sulfur missiles that kill us. It's a smell every person in Gaza can recognize instantly. In Gaza, we are sentenced to die by pumping bullets, hunger, groaning, and thirst. The world continues to underestimate the value of Palestinian life, treating us as if we are less than human. The occupation didn't just paint baby formula, they also killed the little girl Julie. And like her, dozens of children are suffering from malnutrition, according to the Integrated for Security Phase classification and the UN date. Over 1.2 million people are in urgent need of food security. 785,000 children are deprived of proper nutrition. 70,000 children under the age of 5 are suffering from acute malnutrition. 546 patients have died since the closure of the crossing. They were waiting for treatment outside Gaza. The number of deaths, especially among malnourished patients, increase every single day. Israel is blocking the entry of medications, treatment, and infant formula. There is not a single hospital in Gaza functioning at full capacity. 22 hospitals have gone completely out of service. The occupation kills 28 children every day. That's one child every 40 minutes. And 15 women daily. 70 minutes. More than 260,000
Hamza, can you fix the connection? Can you fix the
lit.
connection a little bit more, if you can, please? Do you hear me? Hello?
His internet seems to be weak.
Yeah, I know.
So while we were listening to Iyad and Hamza, we were actually thinking that we should start a campaign against Gaza Humanitarian Fund. It is mainly an American effort, so we should have a letter and phone call campaign, and we encourage everyone to call their representative and say that this is against every humanitarian and international law. It is not reaching the people that it should reach. It is a death trap, and it has a very clear alternative, which is give the aid to the people in Gaza themselves through UNRWA. They are used to it, and they know exactly what to do with the aid. They have done it before many, many times, and give up on this horrific project that is definitely not humanitarian.
Yeah,
And
Dr.
also,
Karma, I need to add something important, Dr. Nadal.
Please. Yeah.
Now in the Sky News, they published the new post for the American embassy in Israel. They claiming that they want to legitimize the killing of innocent people by they announce there's a plan for Hamas to kill the GHF employee in the Gaza. So this is a new news. I read it now. I think that they want to legitimize the killing of innocent people around the GHF warehouses. So I recommend it, and I completely agree with Dr. Karma that we need an international and media campaign that talk about the GHF with the clear point. Maybe we depend over our testimonies and the Harvard research and others reports that document the aggression against civilians. So if we finished our meetings, I hope some written proposal, Dr. Nidal, if you agreed about this point, maybe other sides will cooperate with each other to maybe posting some new campaign for all of the world. It's a very initiative work. I recommended that, and all of the free people in the world will support this campaign. It's very important now to show to the Israeli and the Americans their deceptions will not go on, and we will stop it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it will be a good idea after maybe the meeting, we can create a group to start this campaign. It's going to be a petition and a letter campaign and a calling campaign. But even before that, I think every American citizen should call their representatives individually and personally and immediately and every day, demanding them not to use our tax money because they just approved 30 more millions for them, and the plan is even to give another 500 million. Not to use our tax money, not to give our politician the authorization to use our money to trap and bait the starved people, to kill them, and to be a tool of genocide. The food is there, the aid is there, the organization that need how to do it are there. Everything is only 5 miles away from the starved people. Our tax money should not be used to fund this criminal evangelical Zionist project that is using our tax money to starve and murder children and healthcare workers. So please wait for the letter, but even before we do the letter, the campaign, every one of us can call their representatives, all of them, your Congress, your senators, your Congress representative, your local officials, your local elected officials, and sound the alarm about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It is a shady organization. It is an organization set up by the genocidal forces with a cooperation between Israel and some evangelicals in the United States who believe and support the genocide, to use our tax money to bait and kill people. And again, I think Hamza has a bad connection. If he comes back, hopefully later on we can talk to him again. If we have more questions for you, Iyad, please, if you can stay around, that would be good. But we can move with the second, maybe half of our webinar today. And as we all know that the world is suffering from multiple genocides at the same time happening now. And unfortunately, with all the rules, all the conventions, all the international laws that were put there to prevent genocide, despite all of this, we continue to fail. From Rwanda to Tigray to Palestine, it is the same crime, the same pathology, the same inaction. The names change, the victims change, but the silence remains. In Rwanda, the world waited until 1 million people were dead. In Tigray, mass rapes and the starvation of civilians were buried under bureaucratic cowardice. In Gaza today, doctors, nurses, and newborn babies are being starved to death in full view of the international community, and the UN debates language while children rot in mass graves. Let me tell you what is happening right now. Babies are dying in incubators. Dr. Ahmed Al-Farra, our frequent guest, could not make it today, but he is an eyewitness to that, and he showed us the pictures of the babies at his department in his hospital dying in their incubators, not because of disease, but because Israel and its backers have cut off formula and fuel. Hospitals are bombed, doctors are hunted, nurses are shot. And when healthcare workers try to carry some formula to keep infants alive, it is confiscated at gunpoint. Even Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, confirmed what we and our colleagues from Gaza have been screaming for months. The so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, built by American evangelicals and Israeli military planners, has become a death trap. Over 600 civilians have been executed near food lines in just 1 month. People are being gunned down for the crime of being hungry. This is not chaos. This is design. It is a militarized humanitarian theater where aid is weaponized, hunger is used as a bait, and starvation is deployed as a method of extermination. This is genocide coordinated and calculated with the fingerprints of the United States government, private contractors, and the extremist ideologues all over the bodies of the victims. We have reached the edge of human decency. Enough silence, enough complicity, enough waiting until the corpses pile high enough to make it into textbooks. This is the same pattern we saw in Rwanda, the same hunger we see in Tigray, the same targeted destruction of healthcare infrastructure, the same indifference to the screams of the dying. And now in Gaza, but it will not stop there, because the genocide is never limited to one people. It is a sickness that spreads, and we, the medical community, the humanitarian world, the supposed defenders of life, have become complicit through inaction. We cannot call ourselves healers if we remain silent while doctors are buried with their patients, while ambulances are bombed, while starving infants are executed by neglect. This is not a political crisis. This is a collapse of our shared humanity. Today, we honor those who died waiting in food lines. We honor the nurses who refused to abandon their patients and were bombed alongside them. We honor every child who died with a spoonful of hope in their hand. And we commit today to act not in another year, not after another mass grave, but now. Let this webinar be our cry to the world. Stop the genocides, stop the starvation, stop the weapons, stop the insanity. Let us build a world where food is not a trap, where hospitals are not battlegrounds, where life is sacred, not strategic. This is not charity. This is survival. This is justice. This is medicine. And now I want to move with our colleague, our friend, Mr. Claude Gatebuke. He's a Rwandan genocide survivor. He's the executive director of and the co-founder of the African Great Lakes Action Network, and he's the co-author of Survivors Uncensored, a collection of over 100 testimonies from the survivors of violence in Rwanda. Thank you, Mr. Gatebuke. Thank you for joining us. And we know that all these conflicts, all these genocides are interconnected, and we know that they were all enabled by the international silence, the international apathy, and the international indifference, and that all what the international system have of laws and conventions did not protect humanity yet, did not prevent genocide, and as of now, unable to stop them. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours, and we're happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dindal Jabbour. It's a great honor to be among everyone here, among survivors of genocide, among witnesses of genocide, and also among upstanders, folks and people who are actually taking action and taking a stand against genocide. As you said, genocides are interconnected, and the connecting thread is the international community's complicity and, in many cases, active role in actually enabling, sponsoring, and funding, and even militarizing these genocides. I'll share a little bit of my story. I was born in Rwanda. Growing up, I never thought that I would end up living in another country. I didn't actually know that there were other countries outside of Rwanda. And when I was 10 years old, a war started in Rwanda. The war, when it started, I didn't know what was actually happening. I was oblivious to the fact that Rwanda even had ethnic groups, because when you look, Rwandans are all Black. Everybody speaks the same language, same religious practices, and same religious diversity. It's hard to tell a person of Hutu or Tutsi or Twa ethnicity from just looking at them, in spite of the things that we've heard publicized about the differences in how people look. I'm from a mixed background. My mother's Tutsi, my father's Hutu, but if you were to look at both of them, you couldn't tell the difference between the two. And that's one of the things that I started to learn when that war started. It was the war was being waged by a group of exiled Tutsis who were close to the king when Rwanda had an uprising, a social revolution that ousted the previous monarch and the colonial Belgians, colonial masters. And Rwanda went from being a monarchy, a kingdom, to a republic. Before that, there had been a lot of injustices, both from the colonial masters and also from the ruling class, the king's court, who, it was a family, it was a dynasty. It was one family where the father, when they died, the son took over, and after the son was the grandson and the great-grandson, and so on and so forth. And it was a small group of elite Tutsis who did a lot of oppressing the Hutus, the Twas, and the poor Tutsis. And that's how the social revolution was very popular in 1959, and it ended up ousting the king. And then hundreds of thousands, there was violence, it was a violent revolution. Hundreds of thousands of people associated with the king escaped and left Rwanda, and they ended up in neighboring countries, mostly Uganda. And then in the early 1980s, a lot of the young people who were exiled, including Rwanda's president now, Paul Kagame, and many of his age mates, were recruited into a rebel group by today Uganda's president, Yoweri Museveni. After he lost an election in Uganda, he started a war and he recruited a lot of Rwandan exiles. They were trained militarily, and eventually Museveni's rebellion took over in Uganda almost 40 years ago, in 1986. Museveni is still the president of Uganda today. They had committed a lot of atrocities, including false flag operations, as we've seen Israel do in Gaza and in the Middle East, and used a lot of international favor in media to cover their atrocities. Museveni is one of the biggest darlings of Western powers. That's why he's been in power for almost 40 years. Next year will be 40 years in power. So among Museveni's, in Museveni's army was a group of Rwandans who became elite. They were leading the military. Paul Kagame was the chief military intelligence in Uganda. When the war started in 1990, Paul Kagame was training in the US at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas as a Ugandan officer. And right when the invasion happened from Uganda, he came back to Uganda and joined that rebellion, and the war lasted 4 years. The war displaced over 1 million people in a country of 8 million. So that's more than 10% of the population was displaced. There were mass atrocities, rape, calling people to meetings, surrounding them and killing them, all kinds of things. And it was a lot of starvation. Now, during that war, there were two Western powers or two sides that were supported by Western powers. The Rwandan government at the time was backed by the French. Paul Kagame's rebellion, which was an extension of Uganda's army, was supported by the US and the UK. And the war itself culminated in the genocide of 1994. The genocide was kicked off by an assassination, which there had been many assassinations prior to that of politicians, high-ranking politicians in Rwanda, which led to riots. There were a lot of riots in the country leading up to the genocide. As I said, there was mass displacements. There were a lot of injured people. People had left their homes for years, hadn't returned to their homes. There was general insecurity where there were so many weapons in the country that at the time as a young teen, it would have been easier for me to buy a grenade than it would have been for me to get a bottle of soda or a loaf of bread. And so you have all of this tension. And so what came with that war was the ethnic tensions that I was completely oblivious to. And I remember one day they asked us in class what ethnic groups we belonged to. Some, children knew what they were, others didn't, and many others. Most of us did not actually know what ethnic groups we belonged to. We couldn't even tell people apart, but some people, they did know. And then fast forward to April 6, 1994, there was an assassination, a double assassination of the Rwandan and the Burundian presidents who were flying back into Rwanda from a regional summit discussing the implementation of a peace deal that had been signed between the Rwandan government and the rebels. After that assassination, everything changed. My only exposure to war at that time had been seeing injured people, hearing stories of people who lost their families, the atrocities that were being committed in areas that were occupied by these RPF rebels, which is known as the Rwandan Patriotic Front, now in power in Rwanda. They ended up winning that war at the end of the genocide. But what happened for us, for me and my mother and my two sisters, in 1992, my father got a scholarship to go to the US. And so when the genocide started, he was actually in the US. And that night of the shooting of the president, we were already used to hearing all of these explosions and gunfire and things like that, even with just simple robberies. As I said, it would have been cheaper for me to get a grenade as a child. So thieves and regular criminals had access to the weapons. So we were hearing all of these explosions around the city of Kigali, which is the capital of Rwanda anyway, during that time. So fast forward now to that night, we heard these two major explosions, unlike what we were used to hearing. And then the phone rang, and my mother came back and said, the president's plane has been shot. And my reaction was, oh my goodness, I hope the president didn't die, because if he died, we're not going to be able to finish our soccer tournament. And, you know, for me, that was the biggest worry as a child. It was, I didn't want to see another assassination that led to riots, because riots shut down the city. And for me, I just wanted to go play soccer. And soon after that, I completely forgot about the soccer. You know, my sisters were like, "Oh, Claude, you're so stupid. You were thinking about soccer and you just heard what, you know, all, you know, those two explosions." That night, then we started hearing major, major explosions, just shelling all over the place. We started hearing all of these shootings, and not only just gunshots, but explosions and shelling, where we would hear an explosion on one side of the city and it would whistle over our heads and boom, and explode on the other side. And I was so scared. I thought that everything around me was crumbling. People were screaming for help. Dogs were barking. All kinds of animals were making noise. And my stomach was bubbling, and I was shaking, and I was pacing back and forth, you know, thinking, oh, I gotta go pee. And then I hear an explosion, and I come right back running. And it was like a totally restless night that night. And eventually I became numb. And then the next day we went out and we couldn't see any destruction, but we were still hearing all these explosions. And now we start seeing smoke in the air, and dust is going up in the air, and there's gunpowder smell everywhere. And the people were really scared. And leading up to the genocide, one of the things that happened was the extremist Hutus used the atrocities that the Tutsi rebellion was committing as a way to paint all Tutsis as a part of this rebellion, and as brutal and inhumane as these rebels were committing. And so there was already all of this tension and ethnic tension that had risen in Rwanda. And that day, the next day after all of these explosions had started, gangs of Hutu militias and extremist Hutu individuals started going from house to house, hunting down Tutsis and killing them with hand weapons like machetes and clubs and things like that. We ended up going into hiding in a little storage shed at our house. And we would hear people at night in our house looking for us, looking to kill us. Eventually, the neighbors bundled us up in blankets, and they took us to another neighbor's house to shelter us. And most people who survived the Rwandan genocide were sheltered by Hutu neighbors. And so we sheltered in this house. They fed us, they gave us everything. We had nothing. We took nothing to this house. And we had witnessed so much death by our own eyes between the bombings and the machete wielding individuals who were chopping people down. My sisters and myself and my mother. But it kept getting worse, and bodies were piling up on the side of the streets. And now when you walk out of the house, you want to throw up, because all you're seeing and smelling is a mixture of gunpowder, smoke, dust from all the destruction, and decomposing human flesh. That whole mix would just make you want to throw up. Eventually, the bombings were actually being carried out by the rebel group, the RPF. They had infiltrated the whole country, and they were bombing indiscriminately at different neighborhoods. The area we were in started getting hit. The house we were in ended up getting hit with a shell, and the family that was sheltering us said, "You know what? We need to get you farther away from the city. We need to get everybody out of here because there were so many people sheltering in this house. And they hired a little pickup truck to take us out of the city. And we started trying to escape. The destination we were going to was the village near the Congo in northwest Rwanda, where my father is from. And so as we traveled, we kept getting stopped at these checkpoints, and they would threaten to kill us. At times, they would take all of us out of the vehicle, and somebody would always intervene and say, no, don't kill them, leave them alone. And then at one point, they stopped the vehicle at a checkpoint, and they pointed at my mother and me, and they told us to leave, ordered the truck to leave, to get out of the truck. They ordered the truck to leave. They put me on one side of the street, put my mother on the other side of the street, and a guy looks me in the eyes and he goes, say goodbye to life. And then they led us away from the street. They take us to this little bamboo forest with a little carpentry. And just as they were getting ready to kill us, a crowd of people we didn't know because we had traveled for hours at this point, rushed in. It was mostly women, children, and older men, and they started yelling at these guys, and they said, leave them alone, stop killing people, leave them alone. And somehow they got distracted, and they looked at me and my mother, and they go talk to those people that are yelling at us, borrow some shovels and hoes, and dig your own graves because we need to bury you after we kill you. And just as this was happening, the truck driver came back, and he came back twice. Each time he came with another person. And so he brought these two men, and these two men started pleading and negotiating and asking for us to be let go. And the militias who wanted to kill us, they insisted and said, no, we're going to kill them here. If you want to help them dig, we're going to, you can go help them. But eventually one of the two men who came told them, this little boy and his mother are not going to make it 5 miles from here. Let somebody else kill them. Somehow they agreed to that. And we left. And we ended up with another family in the town of Gisenyi. Instead of going to the village, because they told us if we go to the village, it was too dangerous, we'll get killed. Another family took us in. Meanwhile, that rebel group that started the war in 1990 is still bombing the whole country, and behind their lines, they were also rounding people up and killing them with the back of hose. So they didn't want to waste their bullets. They would round people up and they would bash their heads in. And we didn't know this until much later, after the genocide, once we encountered other survivors. So then the bombing gets really, really bad, and we ended up crossing the border into Congo, and the humanitarian crisis was horrible, which is why when I hear what is happening and see what is happening to the people in Gaza, I can completely and totally relate, because, making people walk for miles and miles to get food or to go to safety is something that we actually had to do. Going for days starving is something that we lived. Suffering disease is something where it was so bad that the disease and people dying after we left and crossed over into the Congo, you would see a person running up to a pharmacy, and as soon as they pull the door, they would just fall and die. So we ended up, myself and my two sisters and mother, ended up getting taken out of Congo, rescued out of Congo by some American aid workers who took us to Uganda. We tried to get a visa to the US and they refused. And then eventually my father got asylum and we came to the US. And when we came to the US, I was very traumatized. And I didn't want anything to do with my story, because I started seeing that the way, first of all, the way the Rwandan genocide story was being told was almost a story that is crafted as a cookie cutter type of story, and only people who had a certain type of story were able to speak. So for somebody like me who had seen atrocities by all of these forces, they would come after us. And so I didn't share my story until one day in college. I read the book of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a Black man. He was a Black kid. He was 7 years old when he was sold into slavery. And when he was 17, he decided he would not allow the slave masters to beat him. So he started resisting. During his childhood, he taught himself how to read and write. And at the age of 21, he freed himself after many attempts at trying to free himself, and helped so many other people escape slavery. But he didn't stop there. He used his story to share with the world what was going on with slavery, and he used his voice, and he became one of the biggest abolitionists of slavery. He made a great contribution. And when I read that, and I wasn't a very good reader. I didn't like reading then. But at the time when I even got that book, I was just bored working in a library. And I just happened to read books in that section, the African-American section, which I had read many books in the library. But that one book, I couldn't put it down. When I started reading it, I took the book from the library. I didn't sleep that night, except for maybe whenever I would doze off. I kept reading that book the next day, and I skipped class to continue reading that book. And there was just something really captivating about this little boy's experience all the way to his adulthood and the contribution that he made to the world. So I was inspired, but I also felt really useless. I was like, all I want to do is play soccer. But this guy did all of these things. And by the time he freed himself, I was close to his age when I read this book. And at the time, I decided I would start sharing my story. And the goal was to share the stories of what happens to children during genocides and mass atrocities. And the story that I was most familiar with at the time was what was happening to the children in Congo. So after the Rwandan genocide, 2 years later, Rwanda and Uganda, led by both Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni, invaded Congo, and they started another genocide there. This genocide has been going on for 30 years. Today, there is talk of a peace deal in Gaza, a peace deal between Israel and Iran. There's also talk of a peace deal between Congo and Rwanda, but what it is really a minerals deal. It's a transaction for American companies. And so I started sharing these stories, and my story took hold, and there was resistance to my story, of course, but there was also many people who were like, yeah, we want to hear your story. We want to hear more. Eventually, co-founded AGLAN, African Great Lakes Action Network, with other survivors and descendants of other genocides, survivors, other genocides, descendants of other folks who survived other genocides, including the Holocaust. So we formed this organization, and a lot of our work has been about shining a light and raising awareness about what atrocities are happening, pushing the global consciousness to seeing what is actually happening, because most people, the reason why these genocides happen and the perpetrators get away with it is because the general public is unaware. For me, I'd love to use the example of how the Free Palestine conversation has really shifted the view of Israel's genocidal atrocities in Gaza around the world. Because most people, one thing, religion had done a number on people. People could not fathom that there was something wrong being done by Israel. And it's really hard to get people to change something they already believe. There's a saying that goes, it's easier to fool somebody than it is to actually convince them that they've been fooled. And this is one of the things that the perpetrators bank on. They bank on having the media narrative in their favor. They bank on having the masses ignorant of the atrocities that are taking place. And they bank on the gatekeepers. So one of the things, for example, that I've seen with Gaza, which I've also seen, I see it all the time with Congo, is we have people that are gatekeepers on what is genocide. And they will say, you know, what is happening in Gaza or in Congo or in Tigray or in other places does not meet the definition of genocide, because we haven't seen any documents by the IDF that says that they are intent on exterminating the people of Gaza. But guess what? Sometimes we cannot hear them because we see what they're doing. We don't need to hear, we can see. I mean, when you see that somebody has this intention and they are intentionally starving people, they are intentionally withholding medicine, they're intentionally displacing people and putting them in concentration camps, and they are intentionally like leading them to death. And part of the definition of genocide includes you target a whole group, national origin, ethnicity, race, or religious group, either in whole or in part. So even if you do it in part, it's still genocide. We see genocide happening. And somehow there's all this denial that continues to say there is no genocide. And for me, I think it's important that organizations like your organization do the work that you do to continue to raise the awareness and the global awareness. And that's part of the work that we do. What our work led to was we realized that it's really important that the people who are affected lead the narrative of what is happening to the people. And when that happens, when those voices are elevated, which is why I love the fact that we have people here who are on the ground and seeing what is happening, actually sharing these stories. When that happens, then it's easier for the world to actually believe what is happening. It's hard to get access. It's hard for people to be seen, but it's actually easier for the world to consume it. So what this led us to was, one of the things that's happened with the Rwandan genocide is that there's been censorship around it. It's been used as a tool of blackmail against the international community, but the Rwandan government, when they, where basically anybody internationally says anything, they say, oh, we suffered a genocide and you didn't say anything. And they invoke this genocide to go and commit another genocide in the Congo, which Israel, the Zionists, do as well by invoking we survived, or we are descendants of genocide survivors. And so now we're justified in committing a genocide in Gaza. It's also been used as a tool of repression, internal repression, including on genocide survivors, imprisoning them for speaking out and sharing their stories. So what we have done is continue to educate the world. And one of the things that we've come out with was the book that was mentioned earlier in the introduction, Survivors Uncensored, which is a collection of over 100 accounts of Rwandan genocide survivors and those who survived prior to, during, and after the genocide, including some of the atrocities in the Congo. The people who actually provided testimonies are not only Rwandans, because there were other people who suffered in that genocide, including Burundians and Congolese and others in the Rwandan genocide. So I encourage you to read that book if you are moved to, but also want to offer that if one of the things that I think is important is continuing to raise the global awareness. I'm happy to share resources or connections that can further broadcast some of the work and the work that you all are doing, so that we can go to a further audience that maybe is unfamiliar with it. And I'll stop there. Thank you all for your time.
Wow. Wow. Coming from a genocide survivor. Thank you, Claude. Thank you, Mr. Gatebuke. This is really grounding, painful. And as you said, I want to get your quotes. I think faith, misconception, brainwashing, media have done a number of humanity. It's easier to fool someone rather to convince them they have been fooled. And Frederick Douglass. It's just, you connected everything together. We've been in this, we've been repeating the same mistake over and over again, and the poor people everywhere are paying the price. The Rwandans, the Congolese, the Tigray people, the Palestinians, only because it's just, maybe it's just easier to be complicit. It's less work, or there is more price for standing up for the truth. But thank you for sharing this powerful testimony. We are lucky to have you. We would love to work together because, as you said, we need to change. Humanity. We need to uplift the voices that fighting genocide. We need to find better mechanisms to safeguard humanity. We need to connect with all the victims all over the world who are going or undergoing genocide. Please connect us with any victims from Congo. We've been trying many times. We have a hard time trying to reach victims from there. We do need to uplift, their voice to shed more light on their plight. We as doctors, healthcare workers, we think it's part of our job, part of our mission, part of our oath to advocate for the victims, whoever they are, wherever they are. Many of us in the beginning are Palestinians, and because of the genocide in Gaza has been very painful, very fast. Most of our focus was and still on Gaza, but we really want to. The mission, our vision is to expose these crimes all over the world, mobilize the medical community, mobilize the world, the good people of conscience all over the world, the politicians, everyone against this, because we cannot continue business as usual. We cannot, with good conscience in the 21st century, with all this technology, with all the science, with all the advances in the world, continue to be witnesses to live stream genocides in front of our eyes and do nothing to stop them, or fail to stop them because we as people gave up our power to corrupt politicians, to corrupt systems, to supremacy, to war machines, warmongers who are benefiting from killing us, all of us. So thank you, Dr. Gatebuke. Mr. Gatebuke, thank you for joining us. Please, we want to stay in touch. We need to hear more from you, from your colleagues. We need to hear more from the people in Congo or anyone you suggest. It's only we, the people, united, can make a difference. And we need to assert that the power of the people is more powerful than the people in power if we really unite and do the right thing. So that should be the message. Now I'm gonna move. We might have
if you don't
other
mind,
questions.
please.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead,
Yes,
please.
if you don't mind, did want to add a couple of things that I just forgot to mention. As you spoke, they came to mind. One, you talked about complicity. Complicity is not just supplying guns, supplying military support, or being active in the genocide. Complicity is also silence for those who have the privilege to have a voice. You have anybody that has social media has a platform. And most people, at least in Western countries, maybe not all over the world, they have that. And so to be silent when a genocide is happening, when atrocities are happening, when wrong is being done, and to see it and just look the other way is also complicity. The last thing that I wanted to add is also that these genocides a lot of times they happen in the context of war, but they are driven by, as you spoke about, the warmongering. They are driven by resource exploitation and greed, the access to resources, and that is what is happening in a lot of these genocides. So thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to continue to connect with you all and continuing action together.
Thank you, Claude. Thank you. Much appreciated. It was really powerful to hear your voice. Strong voice, and being a survivor of genocide, I hope people will listen more to you and to what you've went through and what other people like you as children growing up who are victims of genocide went and still going through. Now, I want to move on for the sake of time to our colleague, a friend, Professor Dr. Ahmad Abu Arab. Also, he is going to introduce another guest here to talk, unfortunately, about another genocide, another crime that's happening in the world. And it's just emphasized that, guys, people, our world is broken. We need to fix it. We cannot leave our humanity at the mercy of these politicians and these systems that failed all of us. So, Dr. Ahmad, tfadal.
Assalamu alaikum all. Thank you for having me. And Claude, just a thank you for the courage that you've taken to share your story and the story of many others in your book. I think that's the experiences that people go through, I think, is what people have to listen to. So we really appreciate you being here. So I'm a member of DAG, Doctors Against Genocide in Michigan. I'm also a clinical assistant professor at the University of Michigan, where I have the honor to introduce one of my medical students, Hiab, who is a fourth-year MD, PhD student at the University of Michigan, where she does research in reproductive health. Her family is from Tigray, and she's dedicated to returning home to the region to practice medicine and contribute to its rebuilding. For the last 5 years, she's been deeply involved in organizing efforts in response to the ongoing genocide in Tigray. She collaborates with several advocacy and professional organizations, including the AMNA Tigray, the Health Professional Network for Tigray, and the Voices for Independent Tigray. As many other genocides we've discussed already, it's becoming increasingly undeniable that the only way to sustain pressure and concerted pressure can put an end to the genocidal campaign in Tigray, which is actually waged by both Ethiopia and Eritrea against the people of Tigray. So I will let Hiab take over now to discuss the context behind all of this.
Hello, I'm Hiab. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm deeply honored to be here with you all today, and thank you to all the powerful speakers for sharing your stories. And thank you to everyone here. Your presence and devotion to solidarity and liberation, it gives me hope. It gives me hope for a free Tigray, a free Palestine, free Sudan, free Congo, and a world where genocide is no longer possible and we are all free. And so, yes, like Dr. Abu Arab said, I am a very, very proud Tigrayan. My family is from Tigray. And I'll be speaking to you today about my country, Tigray. And I specifically refer to Tigray as a country because we will be free, we will be independent, and we will no longer be bound to the Ethiopian Empire. And so if it's okay, I'll share a PowerPoint and I'll share my screen. Let's see. Can folks see the presentation? Great, thank you. So yes, I'll be talking today about the Tigray genocide. So an introduction to my country. Tigray is the northernmost regional state in Ethiopia. It is home not only to the Tigrayan people, but also two minority ethnic populations, the Irob and Kunama. In terms of geography, we border Eritrea to the north, who is involved in this genocide, Sudan to the west, to the south, Amhara, who is also involved in this genocide as well, and to the east, the Afar region. Our official language is Tigrinya. A majority of our populations are subsistence farmers, which is particularly important because of the way that hunger has been used as a weapon of genocide in this war. And Tigray is regarded as the cradle of Ethiopian civilization. It is one of the oldest nations to exist, and all of Ethiopian civilization was born from Tigray. And so usually when I give talks about Tigray, because Ethiopia is such an ancient empire, it's usually like I go through all of it, but because like limited of time, this is a summary of like the history of Ethiopia relative to Tigray, is that for as long as the Ethiopian empire has existed, Tigrayans have been perceived to be a threat to centralized rulers, as they are known to resist suppression and subjugation. Ethnic groups opposing assimilation into a singular Ethiopian identity that is dominated by Amhara and urban elites face extreme violence. Thus, all of Ethiopia's authoritarian rulers who have sought centralized control employed policies aimed at weakening Tigrayan social, economic, and political structures, as well as resorting to committing atrocities to subjugate the people of Tigray. And so I'll start with who the current Prime Minister of Ethiopia and dictator, Abiy Ahmed, is. He is the one who is waging this war against Tigray right now. And so I'll start with how he ended up in power and what he has done so far to commit genocide in Tigray. In 2012, our Prime Minister, Meles Zenawi, passed away, and he was replaced by another interim Prime Minister who resigned after unrest in a series of another ethnic group's protests called the Oromo. Abiy Ahmed was then appointed to be interim prime minister of Ethiopia in 2018. And to emphasize, he is a dictator. He was never elected by the people of Ethiopia. He was appointed and has stayed in power since 2018. And not only is he a dictator, he genuinely believes that he has been destined to take on this role. He believes that he is Ethiopia's seventh king and showed very early signs from the beginning to consolidate and maintain power in Ethiopia. When he took power, he spoke of this idea of unity or medemer. But this unity, like I said before, is not a united Ethiopia in which people can retain their own like ethnicity, their own language, their own culture, but instead it was built on forced assimilation and subjugation of marginalized groups under unity under Amhara elitism and urban elitism. He disbanded what was our previous political coalition, which was an ethnic federalist political coalition, which basically means all the different states within Ethiopia. Each of them can have their own language, they have their own like laws, they have their own traditions and cultures. And it's kind of like in the US where each state governs themselves, and then there's like a parliament where everyone comes together. And he completely disbanded that and established the Prosperity Party as a way to consolidate power. So from the moment that he arrived as prime minister, he already was beginning to attack Tigray and create this idea of Tigrayans being the enemy of Ethiopia. And the reason why he did this is because he saw the Tigrayan political group, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, or the TPLF, as challenges to authoritarian ambition because the Tigrayan people have always resisted authoritarianism. And this right now, what's happening is the third active genocide against the Tigrayan people. He began to label the people of Tigray as enemy of the states, and he referred to the Tigrayan people as terrorists. He also began to censor Tigrayan communication outlets and used media to spread hate speech. He would refer to Tigrayans as enemies of Ethiopia, junta, daylight hyena, cancer, and invasive weed. So he was putting into the population this narrative that Tigrayans are these awful people who deserve essentially to be killed and eliminated. And the image I show is actually one of his people in his administration referring to Tigrayans as a call to genocide, saying that they should vanish by erasure from human mind and consciousness and from historical records. It's not just Ethiopia who's involved. Eritrea, led by dictator Isaias Afwerki, is also involved. And Eritrea is constantly referred to as the North Korea of Africa. Isaias has been a brutal dictator for over 30 years of this country since it was able to get independence from Ethiopia. And while he was already beginning to change, what was happening in Ethiopia, Abiy, and also the narrative and influencing the people of Ethiopia to hate Tigrayans. He was creating deals with Isaias Afwerki to essentially invade Tigray. In 2018, they signed a peace deal which resolved tensions between the Ethio-Eritrean border wars, which were wars that started after Eritrea got independence from Ethiopia about land that was bordering Ethiopia and Eritrea. Eritrea's involvement in this current genocide is truly only because Isaias has a lot of personal grievances and ideological disputes that stretched back from the 1970s for when Eritrea was fighting independence from Ethiopia and during the prior regime of Ethiopia. And so in Eritrea, Isaias has also created a very negative rhetoric surrounding Tigrayans. Actually, in Eritrea, there is a windy road called Libi Tigray, which means heart of a Tigrayan, and essentially saying, the heart of the Tigrayan is not straight, it is devious. And so there's this attitude of hatred towards the Tigrayan people that he would try to, spread. Because of this peace deal, Abiy Ahmed was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for creating false peace. And no one actually, when he was awarded the prize, no one knew what the deal was. All that they knew was that it was resolved. And essentially in the background, Isaias and Abiy were essentially creating deals for Eritrea to also be involved in this genocide and invade Tigray. And this Nobel Prize is basically a prize that was bought by the West, and Abiy Ahmed was chosen as an oppressor, so as to maintain peace in the Horn of Africa, because that's what everyone wanted, was peace in the Horn of Africa because of US and imperialist interests in maintaining peace in that region for their own resources. So in 2020, you see things begin to escalate rather rapidly. Abiy Ahmed canceled elections in Ethiopia, and he used COVID-19 as an excuse. It would essentially be the same as during the Trump-Biden election if Trump said, we're canceling elections, so as, no one can become president, so as democracy doesn't exist. And so this is an illegal attack on the Ethiopian constitution. And despite Abiy canceling elections, the people of Tigray held elections in their own state, and it was quite amazing. We remember seeing videos from people coming from the villages in order to exert their democratic right to vote. And the Tigray People's Liberation Front won over 90% of the seats. Abiy Ahmed deemed that this election was illegal and was using this as a reason to start war against the people of Tigray. And in response to the elections, he began to punish the people of Tigray. He refused to release a budget. He reduced humanitarian aid that the people of Tigray depend on. He confiscated locust fighting machinery. And this is why I mentioned earlier that the Tigrayan people are mostly subsistence farmers, because their livelihood is dependent on the land. And so during a horrible locust outbreak, to prevent the people from being able to care for their land, for their food, he was beginning to starve people. And he was beginning to hold social welfare funds and also block access into Tigray, inside and outside of Tigray. And so he was beginning to take steps to weaken Tigray, as well as to, build hatred against the people of Tigray. So on November 4th, 2020, the genocide began. Abiy accused the TPLF of starting war by attacking federal troops in a base in Tigray. However, it has been completely rebuked, and people have confirmed that Abiy was planning to attack Tigray prior to November 2020. He calls this a domestic law and order operation, but while he was using this phrase to, distract the West and distract everybody, he deployed the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. He allowed Eritrea to invade Tigray, a foreign country to invade Tigray, and allowed the other ethnic group, the Amhara, who have wanted to annex Tigrayan lands and ethnically cleanse Tigrayans, to send their militia into Tigray. And so this was not at all a law enforcement operation, but the beginning of a genocide. And so a lot of times people ask me, like, when I talk about Tigray, why they don't know about Tigray. And there's many reasons for why people don't know what's going on in my country. But part of it is Abiy Ahmed, and what he did was very purposeful in wanting to hide this genocide, and he took many steps to do this. He purposely started the war on the election day in the US. So while the world was engaged with what was happening in the United States, no one was caring about what was happening in Ethiopia. He banned journalists from entering the region. He killed and targeted Tigrayan journalists. He shut down internet services and telephone services. And this shutdown that has happened in Tigray is actually the longest shutdown in recorded history. He completely also shut down aid and prevented any aid workers from coming into Tigray. So it prevented anyone from coming out of Tigray and telling the world what was going on. And it was very difficult as someone organizing to make people believe what was going on, because we had no evidence, and people wouldn't believe us at all, and he succeeded by putting this blockade in, because it took a lot of work for us to be able to expose what was going on. And that only came from the people of Tigray smuggling videos out and smuggling proof. Oh no, my cat. And smuggling proof that this was happening in Tigray. So who was involved in the genocide? There are many groups involved: the Ethiopian forces, the Eritrean forces. Then there's the Amhara special forces known as the Fano. And they have been the most ardent supporters of this genocidal war by supplying thousands of troops to support this effort. And the reason why is to simply dismantle Tigray. Like, as I said before, this idea of unity in Ethiopia is unity under Amhara, unity under the Amhara elites. And so, oh no, my cat. Sorry, she's going crazy. But yes, let me actually exit and go back. Yeah, so sorry, she's acting crazy. But so it was also they wanted to take down Tigray as well, and also they were trying to expand into Amhara territory, into western and southern Tigrayan lands. And then there was also foreign forces who were involved, such as the UAE, China, Turkey, Iran, and Israel. So Israel is involved not just in the genocide against Palestinians, but also the genocide that is occurring in Tigray as well. And all of these nations supplied Abiy Ahmed with foreign drones to attack civilians. Somalia and South Africa also supplied troops to attack Tigray due to ongoing military deals with Ethiopia. And the West, of course, is completely complicit in genocide. They have completely legitimized and tolerated Abiy Ahmed as he commits this genocide. They have actually praised him multiple times as, this leader in the Horn of Africa. They gave him the Nobel Prize. And they've also been involved in sending aid to Ethiopia, which has been used to purchase weapons to kill Tigrayans. So now I'm going to go into what has actually happened in this genocide. A lot of these details are very difficult to hear, so please, if you need to step away, please step away. So please take care of yourself. And so in this genocide, it has so far been estimated that between 800,000 to 1 million Tigrayans have been killed. We are only a population of 7 million, so 1/7 of our population has been killed, and we expect actually more people have been killed as a result of this genocide. And those who are able to live are still suffering with the physical and mental scars of this ongoing genocide. One of the hallmarks of this genocide has been the use of sexual and gender-based violence. Over 120,000 women, girls, and boys have experienced sexual and gender-based violence, and we suspect that this is a gross underestimate for many reasons. There is no healthcare in Tigray right now. There's nowhere for these people to go who have experienced this and report what has happened to them. In addition, the culture, which is a culture where people do not talk if something like this happens to them, has prevented a lot of women and girls and boys from sharing what has happened, and they live with immense guilt and shame. The youngest that we have heard of someone experiencing sexual gender-based violence is 4 years old, and the oldest is over 80. Women were purposely given HIV and hepatitis B by invading forces in order to stop them from having Tigrayan children. This is what the women and children were told. Women were held as sex slaves by Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers. Soldiers would place objects into women, such as sharpener, nails, and plastic, in order to torture women, but also to stop their reproductive abilities. And the image I show on the right is actually what has been retrieved from a woman who was a rape survivor. And in this particular woman, not only did she have this, but she also had a note in her which basically said, validating that this was okay, that the Tigrayan womb should never give birth, is what the note said. Women were told that they were being raped to change their identity and to either Amharize them or at least force them to change their Tigrayan status. And the women were told that the soldiers came there to cleanse them and cleanse their bloodline. And so sexual and gender-based violence was being used as an active weapon of war to not only stop the reproductive capabilities of these women, but also to just mentally and physically torture them and torment them and their families as well. And also just like the mental barrier and the mental heartache that they have had to go through, because afterwards, a lot of these women have felt immense shame for what has happened. And not only that, the culture has also forced these women to live in isolation. Sometimes their husbands would divorce them as a result of what had happened. And so these women have just been abandoned and there's nowhere for them to go. And so this has been very, very, a very, very hallmark of this genocide has been the sexual and gender-based violence. And so because there's not a lot of information that comes from Tigray because of the blockades, I want to share accounts of specifically these women of what they have said has happened to them, because I think it's important to hear from the people of Tigray themselves, especially when there's so few opportunities to hear for them. And so some of these women have said they used an iron rod, which they used to clean a gun, to burn me. They left pieces of metal in my womb. That was what hurt me. They said, "You are a game," an insulting word used by Eritreans to refer to Tigrayans. Disgusting and backwards. This is what you deserve. They raped me one after the other. I don't know if they realized I was pregnant. I don't know if they realized I was a person. They said, "If you were male, we would kill you, but girls can make Amhara babies." He raped me while the other 3 waited outside. He took my virginity and then left. And then the other 3 men also raped me. They kept me for 3 days in that house and continued to rape me many times. And so another hallmark, other than the sexual and gender-based violence, is the weaponized starvation, which we have seen throughout the world being used as a tool of genocide, and we see it now in Gaza as well. The entire region has experienced famine. Thousands are dying of starvation. 2 million people are at risk of starvation. Again, this is a population of 7 million people. Soldiers purposely and with intent destroyed livestock and farms to starve the people into submission. And aid has not reached Tigray. Barely any food supplies have entered the country, as the Ethiopian government, with the Eritrean troops and Amhara, have actively blocked aid from entering into the region. There's also a displacement crisis as a result. Over 70,000 refugees were able to escape into Sudan, where they are currently experiencing the genocide happening in Sudan. And the reason why there's such a few number, such as 70,000 refugees, is because what happened was when people early in the genocide began to escape Tigray into Sudan, Abiy Ahmed began to realize that this was a way for information about what was happening in Tigray to come out into the world and expose him. So he started putting troops along the border, so as they would just point blank kill anyone who was trying to leave Tigray. So people were making choices to die in Tigray or to die trying to escape Tigray. 2.5 million people are internally displaced as Eritrea and Amhara forces are ethnically cleansing Tigrayans and have forced Tigrayans to leave their home. Like I said before, Amhara soldiers, Amhara believe that Western and Southern Tigray belong to them. And so they were violently trying to reincorporate Western Tigray into Amhara, and it's now under the illegal control of the Amhara regional government. Tigrayans who are there were either killed or told that they had to claim Eritrean or Amhara identity. In these occupied lands, you are not allowed to speak Tigrinya, and you are forced to hold an Amhara identity card. And those who decided to leave Western Tigray or Southern Tigray are now in these IDP camps, which are overcrowded, disease-filled, and the conditions are actively deteriorating. And those who have even tried to leave the IDP camps and go back to Western Tigray, go back to their homes, they're either killed or they are forced and sent back out of this region. So the land is actively occupied. There's also mass killings and concentration camps. Indiscriminate massacres have occurred throughout the entire regions. Troops refuse to allow Tigrayans to bury the bodies of their dead, and there are mass graves throughout the region. A quote from a survivor: "They were taking them barefoot and killing them in front of their mothers, and they did this not just to, kill people, but also to torture the population." Arrest of Tigrayans and placement into concentration camps. It was widespread. They were arresting Tigrayans not just in Tigray itself, but also throughout Ethiopia. People were being arrested who were Tigrayan. Neighbors were ratting out if they suspected that their neighbor was a Tigrayan to the police, so as they could be held in concentration camps. A survivor of a concentration camp said that the investigators and commanders hurled dehumanizing and hateful insults, telling them that Tigrayans should not rejoice but mourn, branding them as devils, cancers, and threats to be eradicated. And then there was also just indiscriminate bombing. Israel, Turkey, China, UAE, and Iran all sent drones to the Ethiopian government to bomb Tigray. And the Ethiopian government is indiscriminately bombing. They bombed civilian targets, including schools, hospitals, towns, playgrounds, markets, and the IDP camps themselves. Almost all the universities have been destroyed and looted. And it's not just the destruction of, these infrastructures such as schools and hospitals, but also an active cultural genocide by targeting these places that are very, very important to the Tigrayan people and our culture. Al-Nagash Mosque, which is the oldest mosque in Africa, was bombed. Our Martyrs Memorial Museum in Mekele, which is the capital of Tigray, which is perhaps one of the most sacred places in all of Tigray. That is where we remember our martyrs from the past genocides and the past attempts to remove the people of Tigray, was used as a torture chamber. Women were raped there, when people were killed there, and it was also a place for the Ethiopian and Eritrean army to, store materials. And actually, the image I show at the bottom of the right in the Martyrs Memorial Museum is written in blood, and essentially was saying death to Tigrayans. And then you have Queen Sheba's palace, which has also been destroyed. And so one of the also very detrimental things that have happened in Tigray is the complete collapse of healthcare. Before the genocide, healthcare was improving in Tigray. It was actually becoming quite amazing what they were able to do in Tigray, and now all of that is completely destroyed, all of that work. And the deprivation of healthcare is being used as a way to maximize death and prolong suffering. There is barely any functional health centers left in Tigray. And there is also no medical equipment intact because of either it being looted, destroyed, or because aid cannot enter the region itself. Surgeries were done without anesthesia. Patients were asked to bring old cloth to use as gauze for their surgeons. The largest producer of medicine in Tigray was destroyed. Doctors had no choice but to wash and reuse their gloves, and occasionally resorted to using plastic bags as gloves themselves. Physicians were distributing expired drugs to treat chronic conditions, and so they were making the choice if they would let their patients die because of their chronic condition or give them expired drugs that could possibly kill them. Physicians were turning away cancer patients, including children, due to lack of chemotherapy, and hospitals in general were just turning away all patients because they were non-functional. Power shortages made it impossible to work in the hospitals, and hospitals were looted, bombed, and armed soldiers were occupying these health facilities to prevent and scare people from even using these healthcare centers for help. And so here I show some images of what has happened to some of these healthcare facilities. As you can see, completely destroyed, bombed, looted, and there is actually no even records left of patients in Tigray because they were all either burned or disposed of. So as to prevent in the future, if Tigray was ever to, recuperate, you now have lost millions of people's healthcare data. And like I said before, there is a blockade of aid, which includes a blockade of medicine. Medical supplies are forbidden from entering the region. Humanitarian workers are banned from entering Tigray. People with chronic conditions or diseases were sentenced to die without any medication available. And this is actually how a very beloved uncle of mine passed away during the genocide. Sexual violence is used to intentionally spread infectious diseases, and without medicine, women could not be treated. Victims have no access to medical care or mental care due to the obliterated healthcare system and the fear that if they were to go into these hospitals, the soldiers who raped them would be there for them. And diseases are just spreading through these uninhabitable IDP camps throughout the region, and easily treated diseases such as cholera cannot be treated, so people are dying of these diseases as well. And like we see in Gaza, healthcare workers and hospitals are being purposely targeted. Healthcare workers are targeted for either being killed or would be disappeared. More than half of Tigray's doctors aren't working either because they've been displaced, killed, or because they left their post in search of food. So by targeting healthcare workers, you forever are targeting like the future of Tigray. You are preventing people from living at all. And so this was another way of committing genocide. And Ethiopian forces were also killing international healthcare staff. There was actually, I think, 3 MSF workers who were killed in Tigray during this genocide. And because of this, healthcare workers, international ones, have left Tigray. So there's no international healthcare staff who are in Tigray. And so I wanted to also read some quotes from doctors and patients in Tigray as well. Seeing the hopelessness in their eyes and being the one to tell them that you cannot help them, that they are going to die soon as a firsthand witness, as a physician, is very heartbreaking. You cannot do anything for them, and you tell them to pray. Even our physicians and nurses are crying in front of us because they don't have something to give. Nowhere on earth, 6 million people are sealed off from basic services, from their own money, from telecom, from food, from medicine. Maybe the reason is the color of the skin of the people in Tigray. It is difficult to lead a hospital in a conflict area under siege with no budget, no operational activities. It is human misery, unprecedented calamity. We call for help. We plead for the world to help us, but the silence is deafening. We sometimes ask, where is the humanity? So this genocide has been occurring for the past 5 years. It started on November 4, 2020. It's almost going to be 5 years. And so in July 2021, our liberation forces, which are known as the Tigray Defense Forces, and the Tigray Defense Forces are not military people. These are ordinary men and women, students, teachers, farmers who took arms for self-defense. They are our liberation fighters. We're able to liberate the capital city of Mekelle. And I remember the day that this has happened. It was quite emotional for us, and we thought that maybe this would be the end of the genocide, but it has not been. And like what was said before, where these peace deals are formed as ways to, cover up what is happening or as a way to secretly access resources, that is what has happened in Tigray. The Pretoria Agreement, or the Cessation of Hostilities Agreement, was signed in November 2020 between the Ethiopian government and the Tigrayan government. However, nothing has been maintained of that agreement itself, and the Ethiopian government continues to commit this genocide of Tigray under the guise of peace. And the signing of this agreement has been horrific for Tigray because this has even more so prevented people from trying to understand what is going on, because people just say, oh, there's peace. There was a peace deal that was signed, and there still remains active genocide. The Ethiopian government has continued to deny what is happening in Tigray, and the international community has ignored the crisis. It is both a combination of active genocide and genocide by attrition. So some of the key components of the agreement that has not been met has been that half of Tigray is still occupied by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces, especially Western Tigray, Southern Tigray, and the regions that are in between Ethiopia and Eritrea. We do not have a lot of information about what is going on here because of the telecommunication blockades and because it's currently occupied by the Amhara forces. There continues to be evidence, though, that Eritrean and Amhara troops are still committing active genocide and crimes against humanity in these parts of Tigray, as well as throughout Tigray. There continues to be hostilities in the region. The Ethiopian government continues to engage in aggressive fear-mongering rhetoric, and we anticipate that we're going to probably see even more aggression and more war tactics against the people of Tigray, who are already weak from experiencing a genocide for the past almost 5 years. There are no independent investigations into the genocide. The United Nations actually failed to renew a mandate to investigate what is going on, ending all international monitoring of the crisis. So no one is talking about it in these international bodies. There continues to be very minimal aid into Tigray, and because of lack of access into Western and Southern Tigray, it's just completely isolated from the rest of Tigray. And the population is experiencing a devastating famine, and thousands have died of starvation in the past 5 years. Basic essential services continue to be limited. Telecommunication services are unstable or just not accessible at all. There is no banking services, so people can't even access their own money in order to buy food or clothing or anything. The healthcare system is completely destroyed and struggling to recover. There's no access to any basic medical supplies, and again, no physicians. Physicians have either fled, been killed, or are working under extremely brutal conditions. There are still attacks of Tigrayans and active ethnic cleansing campaigns throughout the region. IDPs have not returned and live in these camps where they are starving and dying of their chronic illnesses and simple diseases that could be treated with access to medication. Weaponized rape continues to occur throughout Tigray, and there are still concentration camps as Tigrayans continue to be arbitrarily arrested and held. And so overall, there is no peace, even though that is the rhetoric that is being used by Ethiopia and the West. Peace has never happened in Tigray over the past 5 years, but instead Abiy is using this as a way to hide and as a way to prepare and gain strength as he continues to attack Tigray and also parts of Ethiopia as well. And so the thing that I want to tell people who are hearing about Tigray for the first time is, what do we want as Tigrayans? What does it look like to be liberated? And for us, we want a free Tigray. We are done. Do not recognize ourselves as Ethiopian. Ethiopia is not our country. It is a country that has committed genocide against us multiple times and has tried to destroy us completely and wipe us from the face of the earth. So for us, a free Tigray, a Tigray where we are self-determined is our demand. We also want a true ceasefire, as well as implementation of the cessation of hostilities, unfettered humanitarian access, removal of all foreign troops, including Ethiopian troops, protection of Tigrayan refugees and asylum seekers, the release of all political prisoners, reestablishment of internet and telecommunications, independent investigation into all war crimes and acts of genocide, reparations and accountability, and official recognition of the Tigray genocide. And so what can you do to help? Our struggles, as many of us have said and we know, are interconnected. And so the most important thing you can do is educate people about what's happening in Tigray. People do not talk about what's happening in Tigray, and that is what has made people complicit in this genocide and what has prevented people from actively fighting for Tigray. It cannot just be us as Tigrayans who are fighting for us. We need people to help and people to become educated about it. The world needs to know, and people cannot keep referring to this as a civil war, a conflict, or a tribal conflict. It is genocide. And this genocide has not been happening in silence. It is a genocide that is being actively ignored. There are a couple of resources here for people. The Newsline report, which is a report that was produced by independent experts, is the first report to call what is happening in Tigray a genocide. And this report only came out in 2024, so it took 4 years for any international body to actively call this a genocide. That follow organizations like those Dr. Abu Arab mentioned, who are doing advocacy work and are led by Tigrayans, led by the people, and are doing work on the ground, such as Omna Tigray, Health Professional Network for Tigray, and Tigray Action Committee. Following news from Tigray, listening to the voices of those who are there on the ground through Tigray Update, Tigray TV, and Tigats. Boycotting the UAE, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Ethiopian Airlines, who was a commercial airline that was transporting weapons into Tigray. Starbucks, who has taken advantage of this genocide in order to gain coffee from Ethiopia, and Israel, of course, boycotting all of those actors who are involved in this genocide, and donating to causes on the ground that is focused on the people and not on sustaining any governments, but focused on providing people food and medication. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you. And I'm sorry for my cat for distracting everyone.
Thank you, Hiab. That was powerful. And thank you for sharing your story and the story of your people. It's the way that the playbook of genocide is so similar in all these places, right? The attack on infrastructure, the attack on education, on hospitals, on the essence of life, the attacks on the people as a human kind, the dehumanization of the Tigrayan people, putting the blame on them and then not seeing them as humans is what leads us to these consequences. International law is supposed to be in place to protect these things, but if the perpetrator is the one making the law, what's the use of international law if the law is written by the same oppressor? either directly or indirectly in this case. And so thanks again, Hiab, for sharing such a powerful story.
Thank you, here. Very powerful. Thank you for educating us. I think many of us here are guilty of not knowing enough about the Tigrayan genocide. But what you mentioned, what you described, are the whole elements of the crime of genocide. It's the same script being used by Israel, by all the genocides all over the world, the dehumanization, the demonization of people, the crime, the systematic crimes committed against the whole people as people because of who they are, the starvation, the killing, the bombing, attacks on healthcare, the sexual violence. It's just so abhorrent. And the complicity of the world and the mainstream media and the complicit governments just makes the perpetrators' business easier. Thank you for, raising your voice. Thank you for exposing these crimes. Please, we encourage all our attendants to learn more about the Tigrayan genocide, support the Tigrayan people, spread the word. Hiab is here. She's herself a Tigrayan. She knows everything about it. And as she said, we always center the voices of the victims, of the community itself that's been targeted because they know their people more, they know it best, they know what's happening, and their truth counts more than anyone else. And as you noticed, the suspects are the same list: Israel, UAE, the West, China. All these governments are benefiting from the exploitation and from the mass murder of the people who are deemed to be disposable. But we, as doctors and healthcare workers, as human of conscience all over the world, refuse this categorization. We refuse this way of going about our humanity. This is our shared humanity. We need to protect it. We need to fix it everywhere, whether it's in Tigray, in Sudan, in Congo, Rwanda, Rohingya, South America, the migrants here in the United States. And again, silencing the voices, silencing the truth is also a tool and a weapon of genocide. And that's why we all need to amplify our voices together. I'm happy also we are happy to be joined by Dr. Farhad Ibrahim here. Sorry about my technological disability, Farhad. I know you should be here. You should have introduced Mr. Gatebuke. So thank you for joining us. And your voice is very important. You are a South African American. You grew up through apartheid yourself. You are an apartheid survivor, so your voice, your story is very important for us. So go ahead, share with us your take about what you heard so far, Dr. Ibrahim.
Hi, yes, good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum, and just a thank you, Dr. Jibur, for the shout out. I appreciate that. As you have said very eloquently during your introduction, I mean, there's nothing more that I can add to whatever you have said thus far. We really appreciate all these inspiring individuals that have come, to present today, despite all their backgrounds and their challenges, especially those people from Gaza that are currently going through this crisis. And then secondly, also to our guests today from Hiab, for Hiab from on the Tigray genocide. We really appreciate your presentation. I've never was familiar with it to the level that you have described today. So thank you very much for educating us and for providing us the background and the ongoing action points that can be we can in some way participate in to drive this genocide out of these people's lives. And then I also wanted to reach out to Claude. As Dr. Jibur said, I was kind of in the background and wasn't on the panel. So I apologize for not being able to introduce you personally, but I appreciate your engagement with Doctors Against Genocide. And we look forward to meeting you in person at a future date. And also, the description of the story on Rwanda was very poignant for me, because personally, ironically, the Rwandan genocide unfolded at exactly the same time that South Africa was going through its transition through democracy. So in April 1994 was when the first democratic elections in South Africa was actually held, when Nelson Mandela was elected as the president. And ironically, at the same time, I was listening to these horrific, spine-chilling events that was coming out from Rwanda, which is just 1,200 or 1,300 miles north of South Africa. And of course, the Western world was initially saying, well, it's not a genocide, but acts of genocide may have been committed. The usual thing that all of us are used to. So, it was wonderful and amazing and really inspirational to hear from Claude and with his personal recollection. And, we look forward to engaging with Claude in future, and also in any ways the current situation in Gaza, we look forward to engaging with him and his network to broadcast this terrible crisis that is unfolding at the moment. And we look to a future engagement. The last thing I just want to say is that I think Claude has put the link in the chat to the book on the Rwandan genocide, The Survivors. I just want to make sure that I got this correct. It's called the Survivors Uncensored, 100+ testimonies from survivors of the Rwandan genocide, as well as pre and post genocide Rwanda. So if anybody has interest, I certainly would like to read the book and gain some type of knowledge and inspiration from these brave people. So if anyone is interested, please check in the chat for the link, and go grab that, and that'll give you a better understanding of things. Thank you, Dr. Nadal. I want to just hand that back to you. I appreciate your time and all the hard work that you do for Doctors Against Genocide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. We're honored to have you. Thank you, everyone. For the sake of time, I know it's getting late, but we got joined just now by one of our colleagues from Gaza. He could not join earlier because of connection problems. Dr. Abdul Wahab, he's on the ground now in Gaza to give us more updates on the situation. Dr. Abdul Wahab, are you there? I hope your connection works.
I'm here. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we hear you good. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Wahab. We know the situation is tough, but if you please share with us any updates that you want to share about what is happening now in Gaza. Which place in Gaza are you in now? Which part of Gaza are you?
Okay, so my name is Abdul Wahab Abul Lamrain. I'm a medical doctor from Gaza and independent researcher. I'm currently living in the middle area in Nusayrat camp. And the area that I'm living just had an evacuation order on the night, on the earlier hours of Saturday. I received a call. It's not regular to receive a call from the IDF, but I received a call from the IDF at around 1 a.m. of Saturday, telling us to evacuate immediately to Al Mawasi area, which is the so-called safe zone there. But unfortunately, we did not. The evacuation order, how does the evacuation orders work? Is that the area that are labeled as a red zone can get something like aerial bombardments and strikes, or a ground invasion, which is the worst scenario. And we can wish for the aerial bombardment. At least for now, it's been 2 days since that evacuation order, and we are still in our home. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. So for the updates about the Gaza situation as a whole, the casualties are still overflowing the hospitals. All hospitals are out of their capacity 3 or 4 times of their intended capacity. nearly half of the patients that are flowing the hospitals are related to the GHF centers, the aid centers that are located in Nitsarim area or Rafah area. Also about the delayment for my attending this conference from its beginning is because one of our neighbors just called me at just before 7 p.m. I told you that the hospitals are overly crowded and people are spending days of their treatment in the corridors of the hospitals. And so one of our neighbors who was actually had a fracture and had an operation 2 days ago, just had left the hospital because she cannot, because she's a female. She cannot have a proper place to stay in at the hospital, and she slept for 2 days in the corridors for the hospital. So she went out of the hospital and took her medicines with her, the IV drugs, ceftriaxone and flagyl, also the subcutaneous heparin, which she should have taken within the hospital premises, and because they have access to me as their neighbor, I'm the one who is taking care for them. I just went to there for their drug schedule to give them their drugs. But this is not the first time. It happened many times before. Regarding the food situation in Gaza, there is still a food insecurity and malnutrition remains an issue. All the news that you may have heard about the GHF and the flow of aid are not that accurate, and it's not saving or solving the situation of malnutrition here in Gaza Strip. For example, in the last week, at least 2 kids have been reported to die from malnutrition, one in the middle area in Deir al-Balah at Al-Aqsa Military Hospital, and one in the northern part of Gaza at Al-Rantisi Hospital. In addition to this nutrition and food insecurity, we need, for example, the nutritionist and the clinical nutritionist, and unfortunately also the head of department of clinical nutrition at Nasser Medical Complex, Ayman Abu Tair, has been killed last week. His family has been killed before, about around 4 months before. His wife, his kids, his families, his mother and his father. And he have joined them last week as the head of clinical nutrition department at Nasser Medical Complex. There is also my supervisor actually got injured on Friday. My supervisor had an open femur fracture. Her kid, her son, had a penetrating chest trauma, who's around 5 years old, I guess. Her daughter, which is around 7 years old, had a brain penetrating trauma, unfortunately, and she's very unstable and in the ICU. She got injured in her apartment as their building just got a strike from the Israeli jet fighters. Regarding also the nutrition that we were talking about, you may have seen that the sphere, which is the one that has its humanitarian standards guidelines put out there for the world, for the humanitarian organization to follow, have diverged dissociate themselves from the GHF after GHF has reported that it had its process is aligning with the sphere guidelines, and so we have to trust that to be at least on the right side of humanitarian action and have dissociated themselves from the claims that GHF had claimed to follow their standards. About the aid that is going to Gaza, which is very little, as you know, and it's mainly robbed by gangs and the proxies that are affiliated with IDF, like Abu Shabab group. There was many reports actually from Gaza that there was a drugs that are being smuggled and actually mixed with the flour that got to Gaza. Those drugs have been confirmed and reported by well-known doctors and pharmacists here in Gaza that they are oxycodone actually, which is an opioid. There is a few photos that are available online. You can check them yourself. That those oxycodone pills have been found by normal people, by average people who got access to the flour bags that have been to Gaza as an aid, and those families just found the bills while they were trying to cook and make bread for themselves. The anti-drugs committee also in Gaza have reported that, and they are investigating more about it. But it's reported locally in the news here in Gaza Strip. There is actually also the gangs attacks, which are the proxies that are also affiliated with the IDF that have attacked multiple healthcare facilities over the past 2 weeks, and mainly Nasser Medical Complex. Nasser Medical Complex have been attacked at least 3 or 4 times in the last 2 to 3 days only. Those gangs have opened fire and also accompanied by quadcopters that have shot directly at hospital facilities, risking both patients and doctors and the healthcare professionals that are working on inside the facility. Today, actually, there was also an evacuation order for the block that Nasser Medical Complex also is located at, the block that is numbered 107. This block has been ordered to evacuate at least 3 times in the past, let's say 3 weeks. Each week, and with each evacuation, the access to this facility is accompanied with a higher risk for the patient's movement and for the healthcare that are moving in or out of the facility, and restricting the services that this hospital is providing for the Gazans and the Gazan population, and mainly for the displaced population of Khan Yunis and other areas that are in Al Mawasi area, which is the humanitarian zone that are recommended by the IDF to take refuge in. Those in Al Mawasi have access. The Nasser Medical Complex is the main hospital and facility that can provide care for those in the humanitarian zone as labeled by the IDF. I believe I have covered most of the bullet points that I have prepared, and if you have any question, I am willing to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Wahab. So, I mean, you just said that the area around Nasser Hospital, the last partially functioning hospital, the biggest one in south of Gaza, is under forced evacuation order, and I actually heard from our colleagues in the Gaza city that Al Shifa Hospital also, the area of Al Shifa Hospital is under evacuation order, immediate order. We know all the hospitals in the north have been shut down and destroyed. They are completely out of service. We know the European hospital has been completely out of service. So it seems they are committing a full-blown medicide and trying to shut down the last 2 remaining hospitals in Gaza. Al Nasser Hospital and Al Shifa Hospital. That's for all the world to know and to hear. That's on top of the crimes they are committing through the forced man-made starvation and through the criminal enterprise of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and the continued massacres, the continued bombing of the civilians there. The same script that we heard from our colleagues who shared the stories from Tigray and from the Rwandan genocide and other genocides. So thank you, Dr. Abdul Wahab. Allah yahmiku, God protect you. Inshallah, please try to stay safe. Thank you for being there. Thank you for offering care to your neighbors despite
Thank
all
you.
the difficulties. Thank you for refusing
Can I
to. Thank you for refusing to
can
abandon.
I can I can I answer the Kathleen Timble question about the opioids?
Yes, تفضل. But again, before that, thank you for refusing to abandon your area, for refusing to abandon your patients and the people who rely on you and your colleagues. Again, we always say the Gazan people did not choose to be heroes, but they are proving themselves to be, true heroes, especially the doctors, the healthcare workers who are going above and beyond to fulfill their mission of medicine, of saving lives, of protecting lives. And you and each doctor, each nurse, each paramedic, each healthcare worker in Gaza are proving this day in and day out. تفضل دكتور عبد الوهاب. تفضل answer the question about the opioids.
Okay, thank you for your kind words, Dr. Mubarak. Actually, yes, I might have the opportunity to share what I'm facing or have done, but many other healthcare workers and doctors probably have done way more than what I have done, and way more brave and courage than what I have what I am doing. About the opioids and the oxycodone that the questions are asking about. So there is actually those criminal gangs that are actually a proxies of the IDF that are working on the ground here in Gaza. They are engaged in some kind of drugs smuggling into Gaza Strip to dismantle the societal fabric of the Gazans and what's left of the society as a resilient society. We are not sure if it was by mistake that the flower that have those drugs in it got to average people hands and for their hands, or by accident. But either way, to have a drug smuggled as a pill, which is a highly addictive and opioid drugs that to be smuggled inside an aid trucks and not an aid trucks only, inside the flower. And as you know, they are white bills which can be easily not recognizable by the average humans, and so they can easily being cooked inside their bread. So actually, this have people also afraid of the food itself. People don't have food and don't have stable access to food. And if they have managed to get some, for example, as some desperate people are going to the aid trucks and snatch what they can have. For example, a bag of flour, they can easily being drugged with this oxycodone. Actually, the reports that have been circulating over the past few days about this oxycodone thing and the opioid thing has been reported by average people who found these pills inside their bags of flour. Also, we are not sure if, for example, there was some kind of collaboration with the IDF and the gangs or criminal gangs here to overtake all of the flower trucks, or it was intentional to make these flower bags that are mixed with the oxycodone and opioid to reach the normal average people and to invoke, for example, fear of the food and fear of the flower. When people are starving, they are enforcing them to even fear what they have access to. It is not clear, but what I know, it is a crime that even though this kind of smuggling is actually corrupt to its roots, as the bills cannot get inside a bag of flour unless there was complicity during the production and complicity during the screening at the crossings where the IDF is allowing those screened bags of flour to Gaza Strip. And there is also the complicity from those criminal gangs that are affiliated with the IDF. But even though at all levels, this is a crime that is risking the average people and risking them with their food and making them fear of the food they are getting here in Gaza amid this starvation. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Abdulhab. Yes, I mean, it seems there is nothing beyond these people. I mean, there is, whenever we think they went to the lowest, they keep surprising us with new crimes every day. Just the most heinous, the most devious ways of, attacking humanity, of committing genocide and using everything as a tool to, kill more people, subjugate more people, make more people sick, more people, broken, break even the basic fabrics of the society. And yes, please, if you hear any more information about this new crime of having drugs in the flour, most probably, of course, this will not come without coordination with the genocidal army, and most probably these gangs are doing this with full coordination with them and full coordination with the American enterprise that is running this place, because the flour is being given from American hands. So another crime to add on the pile of crimes that we have that needs to be exposed, that needs to be investigated, that needs to be accounted for. Thank you all our great guests for today. We now want to open the floor for our colleagues here in the United States to reflect on what they heard today, what kind of actions we can do here, what suggestions we can do here. I know Dr. Awash and Maisa and maybe Dr. Shitab were working on having an action call regarding the Gaza humanitarian crime called Foundation, and if there is any other suggestions too. Karama, are you there or you're driving? So Karama might be driving, but let's go.
I think Karama's driving, but it's just
go
hi,
ahead,
it's
Maisa.
it's Maisa.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just actually learned that one of the members of parliament in Canada actually just launched a petition. I'm gonna share it in the chat about the aid. So I'll share that here, and then in the meantime, we can continue to work on that campaign and share it with our groups. But in Canada, if a member of parliament actually creates a petition, it has to be heard in parliament. So that's actually a really good thing.
They have to have a minimum number of signatures, I think, to make it heard, or
I think it's 250 online ones. I know that they have now more than they have a few. They have a lot. 5,607 signatures. I'm just gonna share it in the chat for folks who are in Canada, and we can share it also in the emails.
Yeah, please let us know if there's any way we can amplify and support
Yes,
the message and how we can do this in the United States too. So I'm gonna go
absolutely.
according to what I have here on the screen. I have Danny here on the top of the screen. Danny, are you there from New York? Dania?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Go ahead,
I
Daniel.
am. Hi, everyone. Some reflections. Just very grateful to our speakers. Learned a lot today. I shamefully didn't know much about these genocides, so I appreciate them educating us. We appreciate our colleagues in Gaza who continue to show up every week, despite all the hardships they're facing. Just some reflections on our recent lobby day, advocacy day on the Hill. Just keep the pressure. We have truth on our side. We have reports. Just keep the pressure. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Dania. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for being there all the time for the truth. Dr. Samimi? You are muted, Roxana. Still muted. I'm not hearing you. You want me to go and come back? Okay. Who else do we have? Dr.
Oh no,
Shitab
I
is
figured it out. Sorry. I changed to my
here?
phone from the iPad and it wasn't working. So I agree with Anya. It was very powerful statements and I really appreciate everyone that shared, survivors and others about Tigray, about Rwanda. That was, very powerful and, you know, I just really appreciate those words and that education. I think one main thing that was brought up early on from one of our colleagues in Gaza being emphasizing that the people themselves in Gaza are asking to not have the GHF provide the food, which I think is really a powerful statement for a population that is undergoing forced starvation. And I think that's something that we can. It's just such a powerful statement for someone being starved purposefully to not want that aid. That's something that has just stuck with me the entire webinar, and I appreciate that you guys put this together. Thank you.
Yes, because thank you, Dr. Samim. Yes, I agree with you because they're refusing it despite them being starved because they know that this aid has been used as a bait to kill them. They know it's been done in a way that's very dehumanizing, very de-dignifying for them. And now we know that this aid is not even safe. We know that this aid is not being given to the people who need it the most. It violates all universal principles of aid, including humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. It's been used as a weapon of war. And Dr. Shitab, are you there?
Yeah. I agree with the others. Our speakers about the Rwandan genocide and the Tigray genocide were amazing. In fact, I think that presentation on the Tigray genocide is probably like the best summary of what's been going on there that I've seen in like several years. So I look forward to uploading that so it can be shared. And it just goes to show that if you allow this sort of violence against anyone, then they'll repeat it. Like it was just amazing, as they talked about how it unfolded in their respective countries to be like, that's exactly what they're doing in Gaza. So same playbook as you said. We're still working on the letter for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation petition. As we're working on it, the more you write out what you know about it, the more horrifying it is that everyone knows about this. And the US has now pledged $30 million. That's just for 1 month. So it's probably going to go up to like 210 million at least of our tax dollars to this death trap. So more to come on that. And then did you say earlier that someone came out and admitted that they're actually shooting at civilians as a matter of crowd control? I think I missed that part.
Yeah, yes. The Americans, the executives who are running this death trap have denied all the reports of mass killing around these centers all along. But yesterday they came out with call for investigation, or they're saying that the evidence of the killing, the evidence of harm that's been done on the civilians and sub-civilians is overwhelming. That's their admission, and it has to be investigated. It's at this point, it's hard for them, those who are already complicit in this crime. It's hard for them to ignore this anymore. And it seems Israel, now that their American co-participants in the genocide are kind of raising the alarm, are forced to say that, oh, they did the investigation, they kind of learned the lessons, are gonna fix it, but we know what fix it means for them. But
I think
yes,
that's interesting because just yesterday I saw a clip of another mercenary working for GHF. It was a former British officer. You guys probably saw it too, where he's sitting there saying, these are all lies, and, capitalizing on his military, career in Britain. And then as he's talking and saying there's been no violence, you literally hear gunfire going off in the background. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know how people say any of this stuff with a straight face.
these are mercenaries. They will kill for money,
Well, and if you saw I was thinking about this, if you guys saw the write-up in Haaretz, where the IDF soldiers are admitting that they're using mortars and grenades and live ammunition for crowd control for, these sites are open for an hour a day. They also mention that they have contractors that get money, like 5,000 shekels, which is like 1,500 US, for every house they demolish, right? So they have IDF with them, so they're actually encroaching on these areas. Like 80-something% of Gaza is now a red zone, so they're going where people are to demolish their houses, and so they're killing people on purpose to clear them out. So I mean, it's their own words. And 30 million, that's all I can think about. We knew it was coming, that the US was going to step into it on a government level and fund them, but I don't know.
Yeah, warlords making profit out of mass murder of the civilians and the victims. Yeah, thank you. So we have Dr. Ashraf. Are you there, Dr. Ashraf? Dr. Ashraf? You are...
If Dr. Ashraf is not here, I would like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Karam. We're waiting for you.
Sorry, I'm driving, so I'm in the car. I shouldn't put the video on. But I did not get the chance to hear Claude talking about Rwanda, but I heard Hiab talking about Tigray, and it's something that's unforgettable to hear her words talk about her people. And again, the theme comes that healthcare is weaponized in genocide, in Tigray, in Gaza, and everywhere else. And that puts massive responsibility on us as a medical community to continue to mobilize and continue to speak up. So we have to grow in number, and we have to expand to all the areas that where our voices are needed. And learn more about ways to help integrate, and even in Rwanda and elsewhere, as we have our eyes on Gaza, because what this tells us is that we are all complicit if we continue to be silent, and it is on us to educate ourselves, and it's on us to find ways to reverse this massive genocide that can affect so many communities when they are compromised or discriminated against. So thank you, Farhad, and thank you, Imad, for inviting our speakers today.
Thank you, Karama. Thank you. Dr. Ashraf, are you still there?
Yes, I am. It's thank you, Imdad, for giving me the chance to talk. It's interesting that Karama just mentioned what went into my mind. I was very much moved by the speakers about Rwanda genocide, about the Tigray genocide. This is a universal problem. I mean, as much as I suffer every day because of what's happening in Gaza and in the West Bank, I feel so guilty that I don't know much about the rest of the world and what is going on. And I agree with Karama that we need to educate ourselves. I think as much as we feel that people who don't talk about Gaza are complicit, I feel that we should have the same kind of guilt if we don't care about the rest of the world. Rwanda, Tigray, the Rohingya, the Sudanese people, Muslims in China, all over the world. This should be um, uh, at least the least we can do is that we can get speakers from different parts of the world where these genocides are happening, and actually we can benefit from their experience. I know that Rwanda nowadays got out of this horrible genocide that went in the 1990s, and if I'm not mistaken, Rwanda is one of economically one of the best countries in Africa right now, and we can learn from their experience. I mean, the speaker can tell us how they got out, how their people reconciled with each other, how did they rebuild their country. I mean, this is kind of a universal experiences that we need to know about as much as we talk about Palestine and about Gaza and about the West Bank. And also, I would love to get people from the West Bank. Maybe Karama can get us in touch with some of the people to know what they are going on. I mean, this is unbelievable what the settlers are doing now in terms of kicking people out of their land, taking their land during the night, killing them with the support of the IDF and the police forces. I mean, where are we? I mean, this is not, we are not living in a civilized world anymore. There is no law. It's the jungle. It's becoming the jungle nowadays. And uh, I mean, as much as I feel sad, I feel also frustrated that we are not as world people, we are not able to change this. But I mean, thank you again for this weekly seminar. It broadened our spectrum, and we need to keep on doing what we are doing and trying to help as much as we can and as many people as we can. But thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashraf. Thank you for being with us. We have Mr. Faisal Saleh. Faisal, are you there? Faisal? I don't know if you hear us or not. I know it's been 3 hours, so everyone is getting tired or maybe dozing off.
I
Yeah,
heard my name.
Yes, please. Any reflections, any final suggestions, comments, please?
No, I don't really have anything new. We're having an event in half an hour here, so trying to we have a speaker, Jonathan Kutab, who's going to be talking about the moral issue of our time, which is Palestine and Gaza. So
yeah, Jonathan is a very strong voice. Thank you for having him. I'm sure he's gonna learn a lot about the international law and the role of the international law, and especially when it comes.
Faisal, is your event online? Do you want to put the link so we can actually?
It's online. Yeah, let
The
me
Palestine Museum US. If anyone is interested, please, in half an hour, there is an online talk by Mr. Jonathan Kutab. He is a renowned Palestinian American international and legal scholar, and I'm sure to talk about the role of the international law in combating the genocide in Gaza and everywhere else. Mr. Gatebuke is still here with us. Do you have any final remarks, Claude? Do you wanna share anything?
I just wanted to thank you guys for hosting this powerful event and continuing the work that you're doing. I think it is important. Medical work is important when genocides and mass atrocities are happening. I also want to just encourage and ask everyone to also pay attention to the genocide that is happening in Congo, where you have basically similar behavior as how Israel is behaving in Palestine and Gaza. Rwanda is behaving the same way in the Congo, invoking one genocide to commit another genocide. And it's one of the quietest, one of the longest but quietest genocides. It's taken more lives than we have seen. Than it's the deadliest conflict since World War II, and it's one of the most underreported. I would just love for you guys to also connect with what is happening there. The lack of medical care, the starvation, all of the same methods that are being used in Gaza are used over there. And would just love for you guys to connect with it, just because it is a current genocide that is occurring in parallel with the genocide in Gaza and other genocides that are occurring. And it's the same players, same sponsors, same, the arming and funding and everything is coming from the same sources, the US and the European Union being very, very complicit, actually involved in it. And as folks, especially those of us who are based in the US, we have work to do to make sure that our tax dollars are not used to commit genocide, not in Gaza, not in Congo, not in Sudan, not in Ethiopia and Tigray, and not anywhere in the world. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Claude, for joining us. Thank you for a strong voice. Thank you for, emphasizing the need to talk and expose the genocide in Congo. Please, if you have any connections, we have tried many times. So far, we were not lucky. If you have any connections, come with them. We are both
I
welcome
have
to you.
plenty.
And
I have plenty to share.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Especially if they have people on the ground. Anyone who wants to speak about the genocide there in Congo. And the saddest thing is Rwanda that has been a victim of the genocide itself now is the one committing the genocide in Congo, along with the Western powers. All of this just to exploit the resources and the minerals of the poor people in Congo. They have been killing them, massacring them, committing a genocide on them over the last 30, 40 years. So thank you for bringing this up. As Dr. Ashraf said, yes, there's a lot we can learn from the victims, but unfortunately not much we can learn from the governments, because the governments are all in bed with the hyper wealthy, with the special interests, with the war machines, with the weapon, manufacturers, and they are not, unfortunately, on the side of the people. It is us, the people. And when we keep talking about the healthcare workers, we need to mobilize the healthcare workers because the healthcare community is a powerful community all over the world, and because we are people who go to school literally to save lives. So we have more obligation on ourselves to speak up, to try everything we can, to use our voice, our status, our presence in all governments in the world, in all societies in the world to affect change, to stop these crimes. But we don't mean that other sectors in the community are not important. Everyone should do their part. We, Doctors Against Genocide, are focused on mobilizing the medical community because we know that the complicity of the medical community has been harmful, and it has been, and many times the medical community itself continues to be complicit in genocide. We know that all world major medical institutions and organizations are still silent on the genocide of Palestine, are still silent on many genocide. Maybe in Tigray, we never heard much about the genocide in Tigray or Congo. Uh, even about the slavery, we heard their apology about their role in the slavery 100 years after the fact. They issued the apology last year that American Medical Association were sorry because they were complicit, and the doctors, the medical community was part of experimenting on slaves. So the Western medicine, Western medical institutions are part of the colonial structure. They are part of the genocide. They are complicit. That's why we need to decolonize medicine, decolonize the healthcare system, decolonize our brains, and make sure that even when everyone else might be ignorant or complicit, the only community that is forbidden to do this is the medical community, because that is literally your job. You go to school to save lives. You cannot say, I'm gonna just stay in my clinic and wait for the victims to pile up in my clinic. With these genocides, you cannot even keep up with the mass violence, the number of victims, the number of injured, the amputations, the starvation, the destruction of the whole society. If we wait and just be reactive like anyone else. We know that in medicine, prevention is key. That's why we have the vaccines. That's why we made the vaccine for COVID, because prevention saves many, many, many more lives than just sitting there and being reactive. And genocide as an illness, as the highest order public health emergency in the world, is something that mandates on us as healthcare community to be more on the lookout for it, to take more preventive approach, to stop these genocides, stop these wars, stop these conflicts, stop them at the earliest point where you can save more lives, rather than wait and be complicit and cover yourself with the fake euphemisms of medical neutrality, a euphemism of apolitical. There is nothing political about calling to save lives. There is nothing political about insisting on, feeding children. There is nothing political about demanding governments to save conflicts peacefully, without wars, without genocide, without war crimes. This is how we can save more lives than just by sitting in our hospitals, our clinics, and giving medication. So thank you, everyone. Farhad, do you have any final comments, please? Dr. Ibrahim, are you still there?
Yes. Sorry. I put you. Yeah. No. I just. No. No. I think everybody on the panel and our speakers have already said everything that needs to be said. And if we can't take their message and the messages that have been described here to heart, then we're just complicit. So nothing to add, just to echo whatever everyone says, and for us to just keep going and doing the best we can to keep the conversation alive and to just keep taking action. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, our panelists, our guests. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. We need to speak up. We cannot rest. The children are waiting for us. Our voice is very important for them. There are lives on the line. This is not about luxury. This is not about choices. We know we're all sick of genocide. We're all sick from genocide. The whole world is sick of genocide. But not doing anything, or not doing all what we can, is a luxury that we cannot afford, because there are lives, there are children, there are mothers, there are fathers, there are grandparents, there are patients, there are doctors, there are colleagues whose lives depend on us. We are the voice of the voiceless, of those who cannot be here and speak up. And as as Mr. Claude mentioned, we have the privilege, we have the power, especially the people in the West, especially that the Western countries are the ones who are complicit and perpetrating this genocide. We have an extra responsibility to use our privilege, because those victims, unfortunately, don't have this privilege. So thank you for joining. Please speak up more. Please do more. Please send your suggestions to Doctors Against Genocide. Join Doctors Against Genocide, info@doctorsagainstgenocide.org. Any questions, any suggestions, please talk to your colleagues, talk to your circles, talk to your hospitals, talk to your institutions, talk to your elected officials every day. Use every opportunity to speak up. Thank you, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone.